Now, of course, you need a subscription to the Wall Street Journal to read that full article. And I'm not gonna do that because now everything's public and I don't need to pay a access fee or whatever to see that shit. You can listen to 2 minutes worth of the article and hear that it eventually is described as a letter from Trump written in a hand-drawn naked woman's body. It reads like some kind of bizarre fan fiction that Trump himself allegedly thought up. It's super weird. I will read this and I don't really understand what's going on, but this is a transcript. I'm not sure it's a transcript that's written and then Donald Trump drew. Trump allegedly, I don't know. There must be more to life than having everything. Donald Trump, yes, there is, but I won't tell you what it is. Jeffrey, nor will I, since I also know what it is. Donald, we have certain things in common, Jeffrey. Jeffrey, yes, we do, come to think of it. Donald, enigmas never age. Have you noticed that? Jeffrey, as a matter of fact, it was clear to me the last time I saw you. Donald, a pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret. And then the most confusing looking signature of all time, Donald Trump's signature. It's crazy. This article was a big enough deal that Trump filed a defamation lawsuit against Dow Jones, who is the parent company behind the Wall Street Journal, and its owner, Rupert Murdoch, seeking $10 billion in damages. That's some Dr. Evil shit right there. $10 billion. I seek $10 billion. Because I don't like it when people lie about. Are you even allowed to sue people as the president? Isn't that like the whole point of being the most powerful dude ever? Is it that you just have the First Amendment? People are just gonna be like, I don't like you, and then make cartoons about how dumb you are and shit. And you just so happen to be really good friends for a long time with one of the world's most prolific evil guys, and then you just expect people to not talk about that and expose you and stuff. Like, what are you taught? What? Nah. Anyways, he posted to social media that it was a powerhouse lawsuit to take down the fake news media for the people. Spokesperson for Dow Jones made a statement to the BBC, Big Black Cock, standing by the accuracy of their reporting and would defend it against any lawsuit. A follow-up article was released by the Wall Street Journal on July 24th, detailing more of the contents within the birthday book without fully showing their hand. And this one was titled, Jeffrey Epstein's birthday book included letters from Bill Clinton and Leon Black. And this article's focus is on how the biggest name in the book at the time it was created was a past president, Bill Clinton, not Donald Trump. Again, you can't read without being a Wall Street Journal member, but you can listen to 1.5 minutes of it and hear it quote Clinton's letter, which is the following.
It's reassuring, isn't it, to have lasted as long across all the years learning and knowing adventures, and also to have your childlike curiosity to drive to make a difference in the solace of friends.
So much for a Democratic hoax, dude. Seems like that is the Democratic cabal there. And that's why they didn't release it. That's why Joe Biden wasn't allowed to release it, is because of Hillary and the Clintons and how they have so much control over shit, and Obama and stuff. I don't know, is it? I'm not sure. I just want it to come out. I don't care about the sides. I don't like the idea of living in a free country and having this just be like something that's being held over our politicians' heads. You know, I don't like that. I don't like that. Are you telling me that our politicians can be blackmailed? Are you telling me that in spite of 99.9% of the entire United States of America wants something to happen, politicians will not do it because they're blackmailed by a single guy? Are you telling me a single guy has, even after death, every politician's nuts in his hands? Both sides, not just the right or the left. It isn't about that. It's about vulnerability. And it's about foreign adversaries, and it's about blackmail. And apparently that's just how everything works in the world. I live in a small world, apparently, because I've never blackmailed anybody or ever been blackmailed. I don't know what any of this stuff is like. It's crazy, probably because I'm just a normal guy. I'm just a normal guy. I'm not a master of the universe. Sure, I have an Arnuki beast, and that is pretty cool. In fact, let's see what this little has to say. What do you got to say? He didn't say shit. Praise up to the Arnuki beast. This is a new holy relic here, guys. This little guy. You know how grocery shopping always feels like it takes way too long, and half the time I end up with random stuff that doesn't actually make a meal just because I'm hungry. And that is the reason why I have been using Hungry Root for a very long time. I'm very glad that they decided to sponsor my channel. Hungry Root is basically my personal shopper and a nutritionist in one. I tell them my preferences, like high protein meals and dairy-free snacks, because they hurt my belly. And Hungry Root starts filling up my cart with recipes and groceries that actually make sense for a little white boy like me. The more you use it, the smarter it gets. Plus, with Hungry Root, I waste way less food because everything that shows up gets eaten. No more sad, wilted spinach in the back of my fridge.
All done here for you, little spinach man.
So if you, viewer of Oompaville, have been wanting to make eating healthy easier, take advantage of the offer that you are afforded from watching my channel. That is 40% off your first box, plus a free item in every box for life. Click the link down below or go to hungryroot.com and use code OOMPA. That's hungryroot.com, code OOMPA for 40% off and free gifts for life. Wish I had this code when I first started using it. I actually use it, by the way. A spokesperson for Billiam Clinton supposedly refused to comment on the leaked letter from the birthday scrapbook and referred to a statement that was made about how Bill Clinton had ended his relationship with Epstein more than a decade before Epstein was arrested in 2019. Supposedly, he didn't know about Epstein's crimes. Bill Clinton, whenever he's asked about Epstein's crimes, I didn't know. Yeah, sure. Didn't you rape a woman in the White House? Isn't that like a whole thing? Didn't you also kill a guy in the 90s? Now, we have full access to the infamous Epstein birthday book, and that became available on September 8th when the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform released the records publicly after issuing a subpoena to the Epstein estate for the book on August 25th. The PDF of the leather-bound birthday book is 238 pages long, and within it are pictures of Jeffrey Epstein throughout his life with friends and family and girls, and also with many faces and names redacted throughout. For example, some of the important people in there, especially victims. A lot of victims are redacted, which is good. But surprisingly, little of it is hidden, relatively speaking. Pages 2 to 4 are a table of contents saying who has included letters written to Epstein specifically for his birthday, including the following names, which we've talked about in our past content. Leon Black, who stayed friends with him and kept him rich, piece of shit. Jean-Luc Brunel, the only other person who faced charges aside from Ghislaine and Jeffrey Epstein before committing suicide in a French prison. Rest in piss, dumb Bill Clinton. Alan Dershowitz, a lawyer accused of sexual assault by Virginia Giuffre. Donald Trump. Leslie Wexner, the founder of Victoria's Secret and man foundational in Epstein's early wealth. And the signs of coercion and manipulation of girls into getting naked and performing sexually are there in this book from very early on, even in letters from longtime friends recollecting their shared past with Epstein. On page 57, a story is told about picking up girls on a beach and taking them out on a boat where, with a knife in hand, the girls are told to take their suits off. It is non-ironically almost the implication scene from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It's art, life, mimic. Some saying it's up.
Think about it. She's out in the middle of nowhere with some dude she barely knows. You know, she looks around her. What does she see? Nothing but open ocean. There's nowhere for me to run. What am I gonna do? Say no? Because if the girl said no, then the answer obviously is no.
No.
But the thing is she's not gonna say no. She would never say no because of the implication.
Horrifying story on page 62 about making a rabbi's daughter do terrible things. It's disgusting. And these stories come from a section of the birthday book that's centered around what appears to be 4 lifelong friends going back to school days. Warren Eisenstein, Terry Johnny Boy Kafka, and Michael Buchholz. Pictures of the 4 begin on page 49 and continue through page 72 with letters and stories breaking them up. There are pictures of public transit passes, driver's licenses to drive taxi cabs, pictures of public school classes, yearbook photos of the 4, recreated pictures from young adulthood to later adulthood, wedding photos. These were bros, close bros. There's no telling how familiar these 3 friends were with the activities of the 4th, who is Epstein, but it seems there are signs of pressuring girls to get nude or perform sexual acts even way back then, whether these are early examples or not. It is extremely uncomfortable regardless. Where a lot of the focus around this birthday book lies is in the friends section dedicated to his powerful friends, beginning on page 114. But Before we jump ahead to that, one picture jumps out to me on page 98, which is a picture of Epstein in a suit next to a woman wearing all black with her face redacted that has the caption, "He is the boyfriend of Redacted. We think he works for the CIA." Now, it's interesting because conspiracy theories have been circulating that Jeffrey Epstein was working with the CIA or maybe even a foreign intelligence like Israel's Mossad. And it seems like most of these theories stem from Epstein's girlfriend and partner in crime, Ghislaine Maxwell, being the daughter of Robert Maxwell, a man highly suspected of working for Israeli intelligence, a Israel super spy. I mean, yeah, it seems like there's a lot of evidence there, to be honest.
But what does that have to do with having control over U.S. politicians? Nothing at all!
But these are conspiracy theories that are largely dismissed as yet another Democrat hoax. They are often seen as having no merit by everyone who is friends with Jeffrey Epstein. But it's interesting to see that this birthday book from the early 2000s having images and quotes referencing an association between him and the CIA. I think that's very interesting. Is this evidence that it's true? Nope, probably not, but who is the censored woman? With theories referencing his closeness to Robert Maxwell when Ghislaine Maxwell was his girlfriend, then would Ghislaine be the censored girlfriend in the birthday book? I'm not totally sure. I don't think so. Her name and picture are uncensored throughout the book, even right next to redacted faces like on page 104, or when her and Epstein are naked in a pool together with bodies redacted on page 107. So why would it be redacted there? Probably because it's not her. Now I want to jump to the letters and writings from Epstein's powerful friends, all conveniently collected in this disgusting birthday book. I want to go on record saying my birthday was pretty recently and nothing at all like this has ever happened to me, and I don't understand how this is normal, or maybe it's just because I'm homeschooled or whatever, but there is pure, true evil out there, and it seems like some of them we elect to run our country, which is pretty crazy that that's just something that happens. One of the first handwritten letters in this section is a poem written to Epstein by Leon Black, the man who helped keep Epstein rich after his arrest, conviction, imprisonment, and release. A real dickhead. He is the co-founder of Apollo Global Management, an asset management company that oversees $377 billion in assets. And his note to Epstein begins on page 118. It goes as follows. A VPFC is something to be. A VFPC is something to see. A liver, a lover, a Jeff, a Jeffrey. Let's all give a cheer for today he's 50. 5 decades L or half a century. By Bird and by Bucks, C's and M's are his key. Blonde, red, or brunette spread out geographically. With this net of fish, Jeff's now the old man and the sea. The letter ends with Leon calling Epstein a dear friend and signing it with love and kisses, comma, Leon. And he says that VPFC means Vanity Fair Poster Child, but I'm more curious what the C's and M's mean. A line about birds and bucks precede that, and birds could be describing girls as an offensive slang term, you know, like what people used to say all the time, bird, I guess. I don't know if it's offensive slang. I don't think so, dude. Seems weird, though. Given the fact that Leon, knowing that Epstein is a freak and a criminal, continued his friendship with Epstein after the conviction, I will say that it allegedly means, maybe, I've heard this, I've seen this, I don't think it's true at all. It could mean children and minors, or it could mean cash and millions. I don't know. Neither one of those things are probably true, but who knows? One thing that is totally true is that it's a poem that reads ominously with hindsight and retrospect, knowing what Epstein is guilty of. Though, of course, it's all speculation as to how familiar Leon may have been with Epstein's crimes. He didn't seem to be disturbed enough to cut ties like many others, so who the f knows? Leon seems like kind of a weird guy. So what did Leon say about all this coming out? Reportedly, a spokesperson for Leon Black has declined to comment on the letter within the birthday book. Because it's weird and looks bad. Immediately following that poem is a letter from another friend whose name is censored in both the poem and table of contents for the birthday book. It's a letter to Degenerate 1 from Degenerate 2 with a redacted name. Still, in the poem, the line, "So many girls, so little time," appears while describing Jeffrey as always grinning like the mysterious, mischievous lad you are. It's under the friends section of the book, so if names like Bill Clinton and Donald Trump are unredacted, who could this person be for it to be one of the few censored lines in the book in this part, when most of what is censored are names and pictures of victims?
Am I gonna get some freaking healing right now?
Degenerate 1 and Degenerate 2? Who is this freak that's still out there and has enough power
Those
to
channels.
have this
I'm only
redacted,
talking to you.
not even being a victim. Maybe it's a, I don't know, another FBI informant. Whoever it is, it definitely seems like they know what Jeffrey Epstein was guilty of, and if not worse, given the terminology to describe themselves in Epstein and the phrasing within the letter, they are as bad, once again, if not worse, as the degenerate. People that have seen our previous videos may remember that aside from Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, only one other person ever faced charges for crimes related to the trafficking and assault of minors. That was Jean-Luc Brunel. He was a modeling agent who trafficked girls to Epstein and was accused of sexual assault himself for many of the victims, some under the age of 15. And Brunel wrote a letter to Epstein, which can be read in the birthday book on page 125. Maybe you could call it a letter, but mostly what it is a fixation on the number 15. Math equations that result in the number 15. It's very creepy. And as you guys know, I am no mathematician nor math magician, so it seems like the scrawlings of a crazy person on the inside of their padded cell, but at the bottom, there's what appears to be a tool to help solve some equations with the symbol G being G's age. It seems like a tongue-in-cheek way of gamifying their crimes for Epstein's birthday, is what I'm picking up out of it. So now, whose letter could follow up the one from Jean-Luc Brunel? Disgraced freak. Why, Bill Clinton, of course. Yay! Clinton's handwritten letter, by the way, President of the United States, loved President. Everybody loved Bill Clinton. My mom voted for Bill Clinton in the 90s, okay? My mom really liked Bill Clinton. Pre-allegations, obviously, and murder of Vince Foster, and all the other stuff that they did and stuff. My parents are both extremely black-pilled in the government. Extremely. They accuse me of being an intelligence asset. That's how off the rails they are. Anyways, Bill Clinton, previous president of the United States of America, elected democratically. By the way, his handwritten letter to Jeffrey Epstein on page 126 isn't so extreme, but when it was quoted by the Wall Street Journal before the book's full release, it was quoted accurately and in its entirety aside from illegible words. It is fairly tame, but a few lines stick out if you're looking for something to point at to say that Bill Clinton had known, which of course he denies that he knew anything, because what else would he be honest? I don't think they're known for that, but it stands out to me because across all my years of writing letters for people's birthdays, which I've never really done, to be honest, maybe once or twice, I've mentioned learning and growing as people grow together and they learn to be better people, but the word knowing stands out very specifically. Knowing what? Knowing what? Bill references the two's adventures. What kind of adventures? What kind of knowing are you talking about? Is this some Moloch shit? Is this some Daedric shit? Are you talking about Daedric shit right now? Like, what is this? What plane are we on? Oblivion? I don't think so. We know that Bill and Epstein went on a trip to Africa together on Epstein's plane with Kevin Spacey, and Kevin has alleged the plane had many young girls. He's obviously massively disgraced as well. Again, Bill Clinton has denied any knowledge of Epstein's crimes, and when confronted with the letter, inquirers were directed to his previous statements of denial rather than any new statements being made. So, he's not really that interested in talking about it. But what is interesting, though, is that Bill Clinton and this trip to Africa are referenced in the very next letter in the book, this one being from Alan Dershowitz, a lawyer who would go on to represent Epstein and help organize his sweetheart deal of the century. It's as follows. Dear Jeffrey, as a birthday gift to you, I managed to obtain an early version of the Vanity Unfair article. I talked them into changing the focus from you to Bill Clinton, as you will see from the enclosed excerpt. Happy birthday and best regards. The letter includes an edited image of a Vanity Unfair cover alleging Epstein was Jack the Ripper and had financed Al-Qaeda. So that's a funny joke, I guess. It continues. Who was that man with Epstein? Jeffrey Epstein is, of course, one of the most famous men, a household name throughout the planet. His picture has appeared on the cover of every magazine in the world, but what was he doing flying to Africa with an obscure former politician from Hope, Arkansas? Referring to Bill Clinton, obviously, former president of the United States of America. Who was that politician and why would Epstein have picked him for the coveted seat of his private jet? The moment this obscure man stepped onto the Epstein jet, he became fair game for probing inquiry. Now, it may have been a joke, and Bill's name may not have been used, but it's true today. Ever since Bill stepped on that plane, he became fair game for probing inquiry. These people are aware, 110%. Due process, legal shit, all that. I've heard Alan Dershowitz, whatever the his name is, talk about this.
You have to be able to, a sweetheart deal. It's a justice system. There's a justice system.
Yeah, there is a justice system, and I love it so much. And it works really well for everybody. It works really well for politicians, and it works really well for those below the poverty line. All right, guys? It works super well. Now, obviously, I want to get to Trump in this birthday book because it's the big meat and potatoes of this entire situation, but there are some other letters that raise eyebrows. You can pick and choose which ones you wish to talk about. There's plenty, but Henry Jarecki wrote a letter found on page 134 talking about how Epstein prefers working in private, or better yet, utter secrecy, and how much goes on behind the scenes and how they share many of the same burdens. Henry was accused by a girl Epstein allegedly trafficked to Jarecki to be a sex slave. Nick Leese, a film producer, wrote a letter found on page 135 calling Epstein a very dear boy, and tells a story about an outing with a group including Epstein where one man called Toto pulled redacted skirt up to her panty and put his hand on her before another member of the group, the old man, joined in. So that's crazy. I feel like what I just said probably has to be redacted from the YouTube video or it'll get taken down. But there's also a George Mitchell, maybe the former Senator George Mitchell, I'm not totally sure. Sorry if not, wrote a letter found on page 146 crediting Epstein for the opportunity to lead a full, exciting, and fantastically varied life, and hopes Epstein will intensify your activities in many ways, especially in the field of science. Science people really loved Epstein. Nathan Myhrvold, very cool name, weirdo. A former executive at Microsoft and co-founder of Intellectual Ventures, wrote a letter found on page 147 saying how Epstein didn't manage his money, but advised his lifestyle and included several pictures of animal penises and animals mating from a trip to Africa. So that's weird as f. A letter from Joseph Pagano as well, who I can't find out who this is. He wrote a letter found on page 158 discussing Epstein's life, avoiding the public eye, wishing him health, stealth, and continued wealth. Not necessarily in that order. You usually only need stealth when you're trying to commit crimes. I'm coming at that from a game development perspective. The only time ever you need stealth is when you're doing something that shouldn't be seen. So this guy, whoever the f that is, he's a freak. A poem on page 164, presumably by Stuart Pivar, a chemist and art collector, based on the poem's placement compared to table of contents. We're just kind of assuming here. It has a line that describes how Epstein's behavior would upset the public and that he has somehow avoided jail. So dark. To add to life's piquancy, Jeffrey, with increasing frequency, on any occasion with little persuasion, will outrage the public decency. Jeffrey, at half a century with credential penitentiary, though up to no good whenever he could, has avoided the penitentiary. That is unbelievable, dude. That is unbelievable. Then we have Henry Ravovsky attached tit prints to his letter on page 166 to Epstein, aside a letter that reads, "For the man who has almost everything, but never enough of these." Then Leslie Wexner, the founder of Victoria's Secret, who helped Epstein grow his wealth early on, wrote a letter on page 171 in which he gets Epstein what he wanted by drawing a pair of tits at the bottom of his letter. And here is where we start seeing Trump's name mentioned in the book. On page 154, a cover letter depicting women, a plane, balloons, and cake precedes a drawing, a picture, and a letter that all look terrible. It's from Joel and falls right where the table of contents credits Joel Pashkow. The next page is a drawing comparing the years 1983 with 2003, with 1983 showing Epstein giving a lollipop to a group of young girls holding balloons. Then in 2003, he's on his island with his private jet above getting massaged and pleasured by a group of naked women and the text, "What a great country." Next is the picture. It's a grainy picture of a novelty-sized check written to Epstein from Trump in the value of $22,500 being held by a group of pedophiles. I don't know, people. The handwritten letter claims to have arranged a deal between Trump and Epstein where a fully depreciated woman was sold to Trump for $22,500. And the writer laments not getting any of the money or the girl. So this is, I guess, a bombshell, right? It is a letter that basically admits to trafficking a woman between Epstein and Trump, right? And that paired with the drawing, it seems very damning. I mean, people, and there's nobody talking about this. I mean, a lot of people are talking about it, but it's just, who cares, man? Who cares? I care a lot, actually, like a lot. It's insane. There are 4 people in the picture with a woman's face being redacted and partially covering the face of another man who I can't quite make out, but you can clearly see Epstein and Joel Pashkow, who has been photographed with Epstein before. Oversight Dims, a verified government page, has even stated that Joel is a longtime member of Mar-a-Lago in a tweet of this picture and letter, so I'm inclined to believe that. And the letter from Trump himself allegedly is buried pretty deep in the book at page 165. Then you see the heavy lined drawing of the woman-shaped body with small curves where breasts would be, indicating they're small in size. We covered earlier what the letter says and how it sounds like a weird flirtatious role play, mentioning shared secrets and commonalities between the two men, Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump, FBI informant. We can see that it's signed by Donald Trump, allegedly, and I say allegedly due to the responses and controversies that have arisen since this all became public in the $10 billion lawsuit, which, by the way, if I got sued for $10 billion, it is so over for me, dude. If you have that much money, you can just be like, I don't like it when you say that about me. It's true, but like, just don't. I have a lot of money. I can ruin your life with I have a lot of money. Hey, man, that doesn't seem fair, to be honest. It has become so controversial and is why Trump is suing the Wall Street Journal for $10 billion over its publication, even though it's now been released by the Oversight Committee and was provided by the Epstein estate. So I am curious how this will impact the lawsuit since it's now publicly accessible thanks to the government, and it just seems legit, seems real, seems like a bullshit lawsuit. I assume it's going to get dropped. Trump, his administration, and conservative influencers on social media have been very outspoken in denying any possibility that this letter, as well as the novelty-sized check and the transaction described in the letter from Joel Pashkow, are real. They're obviously denying that because it looks really bad. Obviously, they would deny it. They don't ever acknowledge anything that's wrong. We have yet to see any, that is true. Yeah, that's bad. There's never been any acknowledgement, so I feel like, I mean, I don't know what to believe, to be honest. Unfortunately, I really don't know what to believe. I want to believe what's right. I don't want to believe things based on political biases, but this looks bad. This looks really, really, really bad. It's causing quite a stir. This year, the Trump administration has changed quite a few gears. There were tons of promises of disclosure and transparency, but that has all shifted, and instead, now they take the stance that this is just a hoax, which is really frustrating because I think everybody was like, oh, that's good. They're going to release the Epstein files, and that's awesome. I would love to see all the people we can, kind of know, that chapter, that book's going to be shut. The whole campaign, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, all these people, everything was built on, I'm going to go on a podcast, I'm going to say, all right, we're going to release the files. And then as soon as you get in, the government, the cabal, the demons go around, they circle you and they say, you can't release that. And then they say, there's no files. Hey, go f yourself. Like, what do you want us to do? You want us to trust you? I just hope more people are, I don't know. It seems like nobody cares on the deep, dark right. Oh my God, dude. It's a distraction. Everything is a fucking distraction too. Everything's a fucking distraction. Everything is a distraction. I'm a distraction. Sorry. When the FBI and DOJ released their memo, people were understandably upset that despite acknowledging over 1,000 victims exist and 10,000 plus pieces of CSAM were found. No one else was going to be looked into, and the case, for all intents and purposes, was closed. Nonsense. He'd post on Truth Social, clearly upset that people still care about Epstein and people won't shut up about it. All of a sudden, the files are written by Obama, Hillary Clinton, James Comey, and Joe Biden, and his voters were falling for it. His idiot voters. You stupid. You don't know anything. Even though I've been saying this for years, you're all wrong. This is one of the first instances we've seen of Trump turning on his MAGA peoples. Okay, guys, it's crazy to see. And a lot of them don't even really care, which is really confusing to me. But we have to think about the reason he's turning on them. It's because they want pedophiles punished. They actually care. Most people actually care about this type of stuff. And when the news of the letter and the drawing Trump allegedly made for Epstein's 50th birthday came out, the president posted to Truth Social the day the Wall Street Journal dropped the article stating that it's a fake letter. It's fake! So why is it fake? Trump says that these aren't his words, and that's not the way that he talk. Everything to computer. Trump also says he warned Rupert Murdoch not to print the story because it's a scam, implying that he had some kind of advance notice that this was going to drop and tried to prevent it, which is interesting because there's a conflicting narrative here. Vice President J.D. Vance had quite the gotcha for the Wall Street Journal too when the article first went live, calling it complete and utter bullshit on Twitter, asking, "Where is this letter?" while also sharing that they were never shown the letter before it was posted. Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, posted to Twitter when the Oversight Committee released the complete birthday book on September 8th, saying that when the Wall Street Journal dropped their article, the reporter Joe Palazzolo reached out for comment the exact minute it went live. And Caroline says that they didn't have time to respond.
Which is it? I mean, what?
If Trump had time to issue a warning to Rupert Murdoch, then he'd probably have time to tell his media team to prepare a response in case it drops, right? I mean, that makes sense. If they didn't have time to respond because they didn't know it was being posted until it went live, then how the did the thing I just say? How would that make any sense? And then there's poor J.D. Vance running around. The house is on fire. He's screaming, "Mommy and Daddy are fighting. Mommy and Daddy are fighting. Please, please. Is the divorce my fault?" Yes, it is. You're complacent. You're a part of this. You're supposed to be at least close to one of us. What the fuck? I guess J.D. Vance got the answer to, where is the letter? Because it's right there in Jeffrey Epstein's birthday book, amongst a bunch of other pedos and freaks and criminals. So that's where the letter is.
Where's the letter at?
Hey, bud, right here, dickweed. Is it possible that Trump and his team are lying? Surely not. I mean, hey, he says he doesn't draw, so there shouldn't be any pictures he's ever drawn to prove that, right? He doesn't draw. Trump doesn't even draw. He doesn't know how to draw. He can draw. We actually have his ArtStation account. Oh, crap! A drawing of the Manhattan skyline signed by Trump and sold at auction for nearly $30,000 back in 2017. What? A drawing of the Empire State Building signed by Trump and sold for $100 at a charity auction in 1995, then again in 2017 for $16,000? Oh my God! More drawings! City skylines! What the details, windows, streets, trees, people, crosshatches, buildings, all signed by Trump. Oh my God, his family on a nice sunny day out enjoying the sun. Just kidding, I drew that. For a who don't know how to draw, there's a lot of drawings being sold at charity auctions. I know actual artists who have sold less drawings. When asked about the letter to Epstein by reporters more recently, he dropped the line about the drawings, but maintains that it's not his signature and not his words.
It's not my signature, and it's not the way I speak. And anybody that's covered me for a long time knows that's not my language.
So clearly he's seen that people have seen that he's a prolific artist. He's a really excellent, he really can capture the feeling of the skyline. He's actually pretty good. This is interesting. The skyline. Are those people? What are are those people? So the signature and the words. We'll dig into that now. One thing that's noticeable when comparing the letter to Epstein to other drawings that Trump has done is that in the other drawings, Trump has signed his full name, not just Donald. In the letter found in the 50th birthday book Ghislaine Maxwell put together for Epstein, it's just Donald. Now that doesn't mean much because Trump has signed probably close to 1 million documents in his life, I'd assume, including 200 executive orders just this year, and also something that he previously condemned Obama for, but who is really keeping track? It's just politics, right, guys? The claim is that this is not his signature, not that it's a legitimate signature that's been lifted and pasted into the letter. It's that it's not his. It isn't his at all. This isn't his signature. During a press conference, the media pressed Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt about the signature's authenticity, asking if she'd support having an expert analyze it to prove it's not the president's signature. She says that they would support that, then states that she's seen many forensic analysts of signatures coming out who said it's absolutely not Trump's signature.
Sure, we would support that. And in fact, I have already seen many forensic analysts of signatures coming out. I believe it was the Daily Signal that published a piece with 3 separate signature analysts who said that this absolutely was not the president's authentic signature.
She even cites a supposed article from the Daily Signal that seemingly showed 3 separate analysts coming to this conclusion. I wanted to find this article and see for myself. Strangely, however, there is no article like this at all on the Daily Signal. And they have over 16,000 results when you search for Trump signature. But going back through to the date the letter became available, there aren't any that reference signature analysis. So maybe we're just dumb and we can't find it, but digging some more, what I think she may have been trying to reference was an article from the Daily Wire, which claimed that the Wall Street Journal Epstein letter was the polar opposite of Trump's writing style, according to 3 forensic analyses. You know, the Daily Wire. Very centrist, very unbiased. So let's assume the Daily Wire had some reputable experts conduct the analysis. We should not discount it just because of the penis-sucking nature of the publication. Oh, wait a second. Turns out they had 3 leading AI research systems conduct the analysis, and they unanimously agreed that there was an extremely low probability that it was authored by Trump. Are you kidding me right now, dude? What? You had AI do it. Oh, so with this knowledge, let's look back at the statement that Leavitt had made and we'll compare it to the truth. She claimed that it was the Daily Signal that published the article, a site that's already pretty far right-leaning. It was not. It was the Daily Wire, an even further right-leaning outlet. She then said it was an article that published the findings of 3 forensic analysts who agreed it absolutely was not the president's authentic signature. But in reality, it wasn't 3 forensic analysts. It was in Grok AI, or probably not even Grok, dude. It was, I don't even know what's the worst AI. I can't even think of them. It was 3 AI tools. So this just in, Caroline Leavitt, also a bitch like Pam Bondi. So they didn't analyze the signature, they analyzed the writing style, and they didn't find that it absolutely wasn't his, they found it was a very low probability. Oh my God. There is a big difference between absolutely wasn't his, 0%, and very low probability. Like, a lot of difference. Like, so much, dude. Like, if you were to say, there's a 0% chance you're going to die today, I'd be like, okay, I'll sleep tonight. And then if someone said, if I heard a voice in my head, there was a very low probability you will die today, I'd be on edge, dude. You know why? Because there's a chance. Obviously. What's a low probability? Less than 50. Okay, there you go. So, in essence, Caroline Leavitt really heavily invited a handwriting expert to analyze the signature by just spreading a bunch of misinformation and being a total doofus, idiot, propagandist freak. This is America, all right? This isn't communist China. We don't do that. Well, we do that, actually. I'll correct myself. But the people of America are very proud because we feel like we don't do that. But we do, though. We do it just as much as everybody else. But, like, we don't think we do. Oh, I farted. So yeah, a real expert analyzed the signature, not the contents of the letter, not the writing style, and they reported that the signature absolutely is Donald Trump.
The signature that came up last night, purported to be Donald Trump, I can absolutely say it is Donald Trump. But it's very much the signature that Donald Trump had in the early 2000s as opposed to his signature now.
Real specialty title, graphologist Emma Bach conducted this analysis, and she's been working as an expert since 1989, according to her website. She'd done work for Google and has had her work appear on TV and in true crime documentaries. Not that appearing on screen magically makes your work bulletproof, but she's earned the trust of many conglomerates, companies. She's a more trustworthy person than, let's say, Caroline Levitt. It's not a difficult conclusion to come to, and I feel like anyone with a low probability of a working brain could probably look at the signature in the birthday book and the signatures that Donald Trump has written on other letters and just be like, yeah, that's probably him, for sure. It looks like his whack-ass weird signature. So yeah, that makes sense. But what about the contents of the letter itself? We couldn't trust AI to analyze the contents, so maybe we could try letting AI analyze the contents again and hope for a different result. That's the solution. On Twitter, at least. Grok was asked by a Twitter/X user who hasn't lost all critical thinking skills to see if Trump has ever used the word enigma since it's used in the letter. Grok finds there's no record of him using the word enigma in writing or speaking. The reason we use this example is that Donald Trump Jr. quoted this post in a post to prove that this couldn't possibly be his father's work, saying, "My father has a very specific way of speaking, and in 47 years, I've never seen him doodle once." Now, we know we can set aside the claims of the no doodling because we know Trump is a prolific doodler. Okay, guys, because that for sure is false. And aside from the fact that it's sad that in 47 years of being alive, he's never sat next to his son and drew with him, that's sad. That alone. But we'll ignore that. We're not going to humanize anybody in this video, except for the victims, obviously. Additionally, the claim that Trump never used the word enigma was debunked with a clip of Trump using it twice at a rally in Iowa.
Now, Carson's an enigma to me. I didn't say it. Carson's an enigma.
It was also used twice in a book that Trump co-wrote in 2004 titled Trump, How to Get Rich. So yeah, that's wrong. It's not the only example of him using terms and phrasing that are also present in the letter. In fact, many similarities have been found between the letter and Trump's writing style, which is apparently different from what's found in the letter, allegedly. And these are compiled by Judd Legume on Popular Information in an investigation comparing the two. And I'm a big Legume guy, so I'm gonna give old Judd a chance here. Judd's an interesting name. The first line of the letter, the part that is dubbed voiceover, says, "There must be more to life than having everything." This is a direct quote from a children's book, Higgledy Piggledy Pop by Maurice Sendak. Maurice also wrote a book, We Are All in the Dumps with Jack and Guy, with a page that's critical of Trump depicting homeless kids in front of Trump Tower. Trump seems to obsess over any criticism he faces, so I'm sure this was an author he was aware of. At the end of the letter, Epstein is referred to as pal, which is a term Trump has used to refer to Steve Witkoff in 2018, so he absolutely says that. He also used it to describe Phil Ruffin in 2011. The letter, if written by Trump, allegedly, also refers to himself in the third person, which is another Trump-style choice that he's shown in the past, and was even made into a compilation 6 years ago by the Washington Post because of how strange it is to refer to yourself in the third person. I'm not a very smart guy. It seems like this is just outright denial to try and save face, and there is no politician or party that represents you, okay? Because they're all full of shit. It doesn't matter what side of the fence they're on. If they've been in the game for a long enough time, they're full of shit. They're full of dookie, you know. They got about as much dirt as a flea market couch. So yeah, signature, allegedly legit. The writing style, allegedly legit now, allegedly legit. I've never heard him say enigma. Pal enigma. I don't know, dude. How about this? How about the BS novelty-sized check? How about that? The $22,500 check written to Epstein for the fully depreciated woman. Caroline was asked about this at another press conference, and her response was, "Did you see the signature on that check? It's not Donald Trump's signature. It is absolutely the president did not say that. Did not sign that at all. I asked AI.
I wondered if the president has any recollection of that, or what you guys make of that photo that was included in those documents.
Did you see the signature on that check? It is not Donald Trump's signature. It is absolutely not. The president did not sign that check.
Now, just in case she's unaware, that is a novelty-sized check, not a normal piece of paper. Just because Trump's rich doesn't mean all of his checks are that big. I would say, because I'm a person who thinks the movement to sign your name is going to be vastly different when signing a gigantic check as to when you sign a small, normal check. One is the length and width of a grown man's thigh. So yeah, probably not gonna be a typical signature. Also, it's a novelty-sized check. They're not even real. It's just like a thing. Why would they put that in the birthday book? If not as a funny joke. It's obviously clearly a joke amongst good pals. Good enigmatic pals. I don't think it needs to be a perfect signature to hand over to the bank. It's just a symbolic deal. It's just symbolic of a deal that's made between a couple of people. So anyways, even if it was all just a joke, the fact that it exists and the reasoning behind it is a major red flag regarding the relationship between the current president of the United States of America and Jeffrey Epstein. If they're joking about selling women when one of them is literally guilty of selling and trafficking women, it's f***ed up. They denied that he wrote the letter, then when it matches his writing and word choice in the past, they deny that he wrote the signature, and then it was found to be a match by a handwriting expert, and they deny that the check has his signature on it when it's 20 times larger than a normal signature, so of course it's not gonna be a one-to-one. So let's suspend disbelief for a second and say that these are forgeries. It is fake. So in this case, we're assuming that the only person who's been lied and slandered about in the Jeffrey Epstein birthday book is Trump. Out of 238 pages, 3 are completely fabricated magically. You know, I'm not so sure about that. And also, if it was fabricated and it was a Democratic hoax, why didn't the Democrats use it to win the election last year? I just don't understand how this works.
Objectively good objective completion.
What's the end game here? If this was planted to make Trump look bad, when did they plant it? Was it planted 20 years ago, just waiting to see the light of day and make Trump look bad? Was it planted right before it was sent to the Wall Street Journal and the Oversight Committee? Like, the only way that any of this is bullshit and is fake is if there are people literally faking stuff the moment before all this comes out, and it didn't exist before Trump was elected in the last, like, it. But all this, nothing's changed though. It's all the same stuff we're just seeing more of it released. So I don't know. I do know that the answers that have been given are simply unsatisfactory to address the criticisms over the letter correctly, and the check being present in the birthday book at all. Any of this being present, none of the things that have been said make me think, well, I trust him. Most of the reasons given for why it couldn't be true have just been completely proven wrong. So what's next? I mean, what else is there? Just spam that line, dude. It's a hoax. It's a hoax. It's a hoax, man. It's a hoax.
Look, the whole thing is a hoax. Democrat hoax that never ends.
The hoax was explained more by Speaker Mike Johnson in the same speech in which he stated Trump was an FBI informant, because continuing to call it a hoax is just drawing more backlash for them. So apparently their argument is being mischaracterized by the media. I feel bad for them. One could argue that mischaracterization is happening on both sides, like using incorrect information from the wrong website to prove the wrong point. It's pretty exhausting. I'm gonna be real. I need to lay down and roll around for a little bit or something like that. You guys ever lay on the floor? Anyways, in the statement from Mike Johnson, he says that when calling it a hoax, what Trump is referring to is Democrats using the situation to attack him.
Trump called it a hoax yesterday.
What Trump is referring to is the hoax that the Democrats are using to try to attack him. He has never said or suggested or implied. I've talked to him about this many times, many times.
He's not saying that what Epstein did was a hoax, because that's what it seemed like he was saying to me, but I'm glad Mike Johnson cleared that up. When Trump heard about the unspeakable evil from Jeffrey Epstein, he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago, according to the cronies. Although earlier in this video, we did point out 3 separate stories that were given officially by official channels for why Epstein was kicked out, or why Trump was no longer fraternizing with him, which was then denied and confirmed and denied and confirmed. Anyways, Trump feels great sympathy for these victims, these women. Why else would he have been an FBI informant to try and take them down? Try to take the whole thing down. He was a hero.
He is horrified.
Gotta want it to.
It's been misrepresented.
This one's a bit
He's not
trickier.
saying that what Epstein did is a hoax. It's a terrible, unspeakable evil. He believes that himself. When he first heard the rumor, he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. He was
got
an
this.
FBI informant to try to take this stuff down.
Oh, okay, guy. Okay. Oh, Speaker Johnson, I get it now. Trump is actually part of the solution, not part of the problem. Yeah! That was my impression of JD Vance, understanding the story, the reality. When Trump talks about a hoax, according to Mike Johnson, he's talking about Democrats' impure motives. They're using this now to take Trump down when they never did anything in the time they controlled the White House.
What he's talking about is the Democrats who are doing this with impure motives. If they cared so much about this, why didn't they do something during the 4 years of the Biden administration when the Biden DOJ had all the records? They didn't say a word about it.
Aren't they literally saying that the signature is fake, the letter is fake, and the check is fake? That is pointing to physical documents as being fake, not just the way that they're being used. So that's confusing. It doesn't make sense. We do have to follow up on some of these points, though. First of all, there's a supposed compassion and sympathy that Trump feels for the victims. Johnson said that he would likely even meet with them.
Should he meet with the victims? Should he meet with the victims?
I suspect he probably will. Yeah, he has great compassion.
Start
for them.
over.
The president has a very compassionate heart. He hates the fact that these women suffered those harms. He hates what Epstein is accused of and who he was.
Well, luckily, victims of Epstein were gathering outside of the White House demanding transparency. So they were right outside. All Trump had to do was invite them in or go out there. Nope. Unfortunately not. That didn't work. While Trump was making a spectacle of going to a seafood restaurant in D.C., he was asked directly if he would meet with the victims on the 9th. This was 4 days after the Mike Johnson statement said he probably would, and Trump responded saying, "Nobody has suggested that, and I haven't even thought about that."
So will you meet with the Epstein victims? Do you plan to meet with?
I don't know about nobody suggested.
Would you be open to doing
Certainly,
that?
I don't like that whole situation with respect to anybody being abused or hurt, but I haven't even thought about that.
I love reading quotes of Trump. It's so funny. He's just like, what? He runs the whole country, man.
Let's give it another go.
Like, I kind of get it, the whole business thing, and you gotta run it like a business and stuff, but it's just, come on. I don't know. Anyways, did Johnson make a wrong assumption that Trump would? Was he just saying something he had no insight into to try and make Trump seem more like a good, sympathetic guy? Was he lying, potentially? The same day, Caroline Leavitt was asked more about the hoax, and she reiterated that the hoax is the narrative that's being spun, not the documents themselves. The hoax is apparently Democrats pretending to care about victims, and even calls the ones gathering outside the White House political props.
What's fake is not the
The
document.
hoax is the Democrats pretending to care about victims of crime when they do not care about victims of crime, when they have done nothing to solve crimes, when they have done nothing to lock up child pedophiles and child rapists across the country, and when they are now using victims as political props to try and, again, smear the president of the United States and drag on this bad story about him. It is a distraction.
I'd call these people cold and calculating, but none of their answers match up at all. They're just cold and dumb. Johnson says that Trump is sympathetic and will probably meet with the victims, and Trump says he's never heard that idea, and it seems like he won't, to be honest. And then we had the press secretary calling victims political props instead of trying to be more sympathetic to Epstein victims. It's just, I don't know, people bitch so much on the right about being called Nazis and racist and all this stuff. And they're like, it's just you're using words to devalue. You're just trying to immediately throw my argument out immediately. It's a Democratic hoax. You're a Democrat. You're a Democrat. It's the same thing now. It's all the same shit. It makes me feel at peace, in all honesty, because I can just walk away. I can make this video get fired up for an hour, have a bunch of people get fired up with me on the internet. We can all kind of, I don't want to say bitch and moan together, but we can share in something that's important, and we can walk away. Make sure we know, and just remember it. Remember it when we vote. Remember it when we are considering even running ourselves for a local office. And there's a way to change all this stuff, and it takes a long time, and you can't get distracted. You can't get distracted from this stuff. You can distract yourself on purpose, but you have to remember things like this. You cannot forget things like this. You can't be won over by promises, and it's going to be really difficult, but I think it's got to start at a local level, though, to be honest with you guys. I think it's got to start at a local level, but anyways. What the fuck am I talking about? I have no idea. They can't make up their minds about what stance to take. They're running around with their heads cut off. Oh! Something is said like an absolute fact. For example, Trump doesn't doodle. Then he's a doodler of the highest degree. And his doodles are awesome and they've been sold at auctions. Everything gets walked back. Even the claim that he was an FBI informant was walked back by Mike Johnson when it spurred backlash online after people said you need to have seen or participated in a crime in order to be able to inform on it. That's the joke. That's the funny part about all this stuff. It's like, he's an FBI informant. Oh, you mean like he's undercover? He's an undercover pedophile? Is that what you mean? Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson? You mean he's an undercover pedophile, human trafficker? Thank you, Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. In walking back his claim that Trump was an FBI informant, he says that what he meant was that Trump was one of the only people willing to help law enforcement.
He was one of the only people, one of the only prominent people, as everyone has reported, not President Trump, but everybody about him, that he was willing to help law enforcement go after this guy who was discussing child abuse.
So he may have used the wrong terminology, but that's what he meant by his words. All right, guys, there's an ocean of difference between being willing to help the law enforcement and being an FBI informant. It's also so easy to say now, 20 years after the fact, that you were willing to help back then. It's a lie. It's just not true. But it is such a massive and impactful statement to make and then walk back when you're the Speaker of the House, third in line for presidency in the event of a tragedy. Like that's crazy. Congressman Jared Moskowitz even brought it up in a move to pressure House Judiciary Committee Republicans to see if the FBI should be questioned to see if it's true, because he's just lying. He's an FBI informant. Whatever the his name is, Mike Johnson, Big Mike. Aren't they not allowed to lie? Isn't that like the whole thing? I swear to uphold the Constitution. What are you talking about? You lie. You tarnish our rights, our amendments. You sycophant. You're a freak. You're a freak. You're not like us. You're an ugly actor. You're on pills. And not the fun ones either. Like vitamins or whatever. This story has never been more convoluted and obfuscated than it is right now. And it is incredibly damaging to public confidence, the confidence we have in our leaders, the confidence victims have in general. How can we trust them to have our best interests at heart if we can't even be sure they're fully committed to transparency around the most notorious sex trafficker that has ever existed in American history? Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed, press the like button, hit the subscribe button. We'll see you in the next one. Go to all my other channels. Go to the Gump Club to watch behind-the-scenes videos and content and uncensored videos and shit. I'll see you guys in the next one.
Of a bite? Dig in.
This message is brought to you by Apple Card. Each Apple product, like the iPhone, is thoughtfully designed by skilled designers. The titanium Apple Card is no different. It's laser-etched, has no numbers, and it earns you daily cash on everything you buy, including 3% back on everything at Apple. Apply for Apple Card on your iPhone in minutes. Subject to credit approval. Apple Card is issued by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Terms and more at applecard.com.
Today we're trying comforting comfort foods from around the world.
Let's talk about that. Good mythical morning.
We're about to taste comfort foods from around the world. But first, we're also excited to be partnering with Cook Unity, our sponsor for today's episode.
Cook Unity is a chef-powered marketplace that delivers freshly prepared meals inspired by global cuisines.
If you're like me, and I know many of you are,
I'm kind of like you,
and are always looking for ways to spice up your food routine, Cook Unity delivers meals by chefs from across the country with a diverse selection of global gourmet flavors that fit every palate.
And speaking of global flavors, today all of the comfort meals we'll be trying are from Cook Unity, inspired by cuisines from around the world, and plated by our amazing mythical kitcheneers.
Head to the link in our description now to try Cook Unity and get 50% off your first order of chef-made meals delivered fresh to your door.
For example, the roasted salmon with pink mashed potatoes and asparagus from Chef Andres Mendez. This colorful dish features perfectly roasted salmon served with beet-infused mashed potatoes and asparagus. It's just as comforting as it sounds, and it's a great taste of what else is in store for us today.
Cook Unity is offering you 50% off your first order with the code GMM50. Head to the link in our description now.
And now, let's see if we can tell where these international comfort foods come from.
It's time for
Where in the world do these international comfort foods come from?
Okay, boys, in order to guess where today's comfort foods come from, all you have to do is throw your dart at the map and Chase, the comfy cartographer, will be measuring your darts to determine points.
Don't get too comfortable.
You didn't even get out of your robe.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they said be comfy today, so I'm comfy.
Okay.
You comfy? You nervous? Don't sweat it.
Neither.
Sweatpants.
Okay.
There you go.
He just set up for himself.
Just went a little early.
Okay, Chase.
Set up.
What do we have here? I know I get an advantage. I lost last time.
Yeah, so Rhett won last time. He'll throw first, and whenever you want that advantage link, let me know, and I'll let you know what it is.
I was instructed by Nicole to top this with this sauce.
Not much
I mean, it's a little dark for a hollandaise. Interesting. It's good.
Is it a hollandaise?
And is this like tuna?
Oh gosh.
And polenta?
I've made a mess.
You've made a mess. I just want to dodge the olive because I'm not an olive guy. Well, it's good.
What is that?
Is it chicken?
There are countries on that map.
Chicken salad.
That's a fact.
Polenta.
There are countries on that map that we have been to together. Let's name them. United Kingdom. That's it. There are countries. You want to say it with me? United Kingdom. You
No,
don't.
I just keep missing the opportunity.
There are countries on that map that we have been to together.
United Kingdom. There are countries on that map that I've been to without you. New Zealand. Thailand.
And there's a country that I've been to without you. Peru!
Oh!
And that is the country that I am going to throw my dart at. And I'm not going to provide an explanation.
But I'm glad you told me.
Because, I mean, as a man who's been to Peru, here's what I'll say. It's lovely. When I walked around the corner of the entrance to Machu Picchu,
Bagging out objective.
me, a grown man, shed a tear. Yeah, that's right, ladies. Only women responded. That's why I said that. Yeah, I shed a tear. It's so beautiful. Most beautiful place I've ever been. Now, I didn't have this in Peru, but...
Like one tear? Like one cinematic close-up tear?
Uh-huh. Out of the right eye. Okay, so... Oh, man, I'm so bad at darts. Okay.
Whoop!
Hit Brazil.
He hit Brazil.
Just in case I'm wrong, I'm hedging a little bit.
He's been there.
I didn't have this in
And he
there.
seems so confident.
I didn't have this there.
And now I can get closer to Peru than he
In the
can.
mood for an easy sesh?
I
Then
mean,
this is the challenge for you.
corn, milled polenta, chicken, olives though. Olives. Olives is more of a Mediterranean vibe.
Well, that's why I kind of
Hit
hedged
it.
myself a little bit. Like,
Huh.
I could be wrong.
Was he luring me to Peru? Talking about how he shed a tear and all that? Just so he would get me over here on the western side of his dart?
Forcing you into a worse answer than me, to fall behind right from the beginning, to never crawl out of the pit that I have created for you.
Well, no. He's not thinking that hard.
Give it another
He doesn't take that much effort to outsmart me.
Good point.
So,
Good point.
I'm outsmarting you with Peru. Yes, a little crap.
Wow.
What a weak little worthless throw, but it's all right.
I saw this yellow sauce.
Oh,
in
you
Peru.
saw it in Peru?
And also the polenta, and then this is basically avocado, like guac almost. breakfast.
That's nice.
Where are they gonna do that?
You just had cowza pie. It's layered with golden mashed potatoes.
Oh.
Amarillo chili paste.
This is the story of the one. As a lineman, it's his job to keep the power on. That's why he chooses Grainger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery, so he can rise to every challenge. Call, click, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
It's guacamole and chicken salad. Then it's topped with Kalamata olives, hard-cooked egg, and a garnish of sweet roasted red pepper, and finished off with a huancaína sauce. Which is exactly how you say it, and you can find it in Peru.
No.
He's been there.
Been there.
But he didn't fool me.
But I don't think you got that much closer to it than I did.
No.
Rhett, you had 11. Link, 9.
Oh, yes!
Huh?
Yes! Oh, yeah, yes! Yes! Ooh, yeah, we got... Did we go for the same piece of lobster? Is that what that is?
Is it crab or lobster? Well, that's a pretty big claw you got there. I guess they both have.
It looks like... It's lobster, man. Good. Saucy?
I think it might be crab. It's very good. I don't know. I can't tell the difference. How do you tell the difference? The size of that claw, that's a little lobster.
Time's halfway done.
Piece of crab. I like crab a little better than lobster, so you just made me like it even more. What's this yellow sauce under here?
It is the clue to where this is from, Link. And you're up first.
It's pretty mild. You're up first? So you're saying UK? So this yellow sauce under there, I don't know what to say about it. It's not too spicy. I don't think...
Get it and got
I think we're still in South
Nicely
America.
done.
I think we're right next door to Peru and Brazil with this one. It's a Brazilian crab dish. Because nothing else is jumping out at me. Yeah, I just don't. I don't think it's It's got a Far East vibe. Should I hedge my bet? Maybe a little bit. Do that. Okay. All right. That's my guess. That's my aim. What are you thinking? Speak freely.
I'm perplexed, Link. Because this feels like Thailand to me. Like, I know that it's not spicy, but it has a...
Well, it's
a light
like
sauce.
Like a curry type sauce?
But, yeah, it has a curry-ish type vibe.
Well, I can't argue with that.
You want to redo your throw? You're not allowed to.
There's no bananas in it.
That's true, Link.
And as we all know, Thailand has bananas.
And also, I think that this is jasmine rice, which is not what it would be if it was Brazilian.
Oh.
Okay, so I'm going to go Thailand. You've been there. He's eating corn on the beach there, though he forgot soon after.
When I said bananas, I was trying to talk about corn.
Hey, man, that's why I'm here. That's why I'm here, man.
As we all know, they have corn there, is what I meant to say. Oh, you're way over there.
Okay, yeah.
All right.
You just had a very particular take on lobster curry.
Oh.
This coconut-based curry contains fresh lobster, ginger, curry leaves, and tamarind with a side of sticky rice and asparagus stir-fried with spices like mustard seed. This aromatic version of lobster curry is a comfort dish popularly enjoyed in Sri Lanka.
Oh, Sri Lanka.
See, we're both wrong.
Well, but one's a little bit closer. I was definitely wrong about this being crab. Isn't that a small lobster? Small lobster? I think it might taste better that way.
On a quiet Finnish lake in the early hours of a June morning in 1960, a nightmare unfolded inside a small canvas tent. 4 teenagers had set out for what should have been an innocent camping trip. But by sunrise, it would become one of Finnish history's most horrific and puzzling murder investigations ever. And for over 6 decades, the Lake Bottom murders have baffled police, terrified locals, and fueled countless theories. This is the Lake Bottom murders. Crime, conspiracy, cults, serial killers, and murder. All things that I love to consume, and I know you do too, you sick, twisted, beautiful, intellectually minded freak. I went deep today, baby. But today we are talking about an extremely baffling case, one that I was not familiar with at all, but now I'm all too familiar with it, and I'm gonna make you familiar with it as well, because these cold cases, man, they eat at me. So without further ado, let's unbuckle our seatbelts, go Mach 5 down the highway, slam on the brakes, and bust through this windshield into this puzzling Finnish case together. So before the tragic night at Lake Bottom, the victims were ordinary teenagers enjoying the start of summer. Mila Irmeli Bjorklund, or Mila, often called Miley or sometimes Irmeli, was just 15 years old in the summer of 1960. In fact, she was only days away from her 16th birthday at the time of the camping trip. And she was a resident of the Helsinki suburb in Vanda, and Mila was by all accounts a typical Finnish teenage girl. She enjoyed school break, spending time with friends, and looking forward to adventures in the outdoors. And she was dating 18-year-old Niels Gustafsson, and the two planned to share this double-date camping trip with another couple. And the other couple was Anja Tulikimäki, who was also 15 years old, and was Mila's close friend. And the two girls were classmates and neighbors in Vanda, and they decided to go camping together as a fun excursion to kick off the summer. And she was dating the fourth member of the group, Seppo Boisman, and her father was initially against the trip, but her mother was able to convince him to let her go. So in June 1960, Finnish summer days were long and bright, so a very enticing time for young teenagers like Anja to enjoy nature. And with her good friend Mila and with their boyfriends along, Anja anticipated a night of laughter and memories by the lakeside. So Seppo Antero Boisman, who was 18 years old, was one of the two older boys in the group. And he was also from Vanta. And Seppo was best friends with Niels Gustafsson. So they were all really good friends. And the two men specifically likely bonded over school classes, hobbies like motorcycles, and plans for the future. So at 18, Seppo would have been either just finished with secondary school or about to enter military service, as was customary for Finnish youths around that age. And physically, Seppo was a very able-bodied teen, and he actually worked as an apprentice electrician. And as the older boyfriend, Seppo might have felt responsible for the safety of the group during this trip. And he rode his motorcycle with Anja on the back to the campsite, carrying gear and in high spirits for the night under the stars. And Niels Gustafsson, who was also 18 years old but slightly younger, is the most complex figure in this story. At the time of the trip, Niels was an athletic blonde teenager from Vanta, known to be popular, outgoing, and fun-loving. And he was Seppo's best friend, as we know, and Mila's boyfriend. And Niels had just reached adulthood at 18, and like Seppo, he enjoyed riding motorcycles. So obviously the two men each had a motorcycle, which they used to ferry their girlfriends to Lake Bottom. And Niels, by all appearances, was also just a normal teen, excited for a camping adventure with his sweetheart and close friends. So these four teenagers formed two couples and a tight-knit friend group. And everyone in the group got along and looked forward to spending time together. In essence, this was a sweetheart's getaway for two young couples. And the dynamic was likely typical of teenagers, joking around, a bit of flirting between the couples, and mutual trust. And there was no indication before the trip of any serious tensions or conflicts among them. And it's important to note these positive relationships because later on, some theories would suggest some internal strife or jealousy, but we'll get into that later. So at least at the outset, all four seemed happy to be together. And little did they know that this camaraderie and youthful adventure would soon turn into a scene of unimaginable horror. So Saturday, June 4th, 1960 was the day the group set out
Was I just the same before the accident?
There wasn't any accident. Everything we did
thought we're done.
They did it on purpose. There is nothing left to do now but live.
For their camping excursion. And the teenagers, as we know, chose Lake Bodom, or in Finnish, Bodominjärvi, which was a scenic lake about 20 kilometers west of Helsinki as their destination. So Lake Bodom, located near the city of Espoo, was known to be a popular camping spot among locals. It was just a place where campers could pitch a tent, swim or fish, and just enjoy nature. And it's described as a large, tranquil lake surrounded by villages and forests of birch and pine. In other words, an ideal setting for an overnight outing in the wilderness without being too far from home. And the decision may have been spontaneous or planned in advance. And sources aren't clear on exactly who suggested it, but all four eagerly agreed, and that's what we know for sure. And all of them, being from the city of Vantaa, a relatively short distance away, made Lake Bodom an attractive and convenient spot for a quick getaway. And the boys, Niels and Seppo, wanted to make use of their recently acquired motorcycles and were excited to take their girlfriends on a ride and camp adventure. So with parental permission sorted, as needed for 15-year-old girls, and their destination picked, the stage was set. So the group packed light, as typical for overnight camping, and they had a single tent large enough to accommodate all four of them, which emphasized the coziness of their plan, roughing it, if you will, together under one canvas. So they were all staying in one tent. And they likely brought sleeping bags, some food, and treats, and other essentials. And because they were traveling by motorcycle, everything had to be very compact. So we don't know if they carried any weapons or protection, like a hunting knife for camping. Nothing of the sort is mentioned, so it appears they did not anticipate any danger from people or animals. And it's worth noting the natural phenomenon of the white night in Finland, which they were set to experience. Because in early June at that latitude, the sun barely dips below the horizon, meaning nightfall is more of a prolonged twilight. And one writer describes these white nights as having a strange grayish light, like someone dialed down the brightness for a few hours, and an almost eerie silence. So this ethereal atmosphere can be magical for campers. And for our four teenagers, the never quite dark night was probably part of the thrill. And upon arrival, they would have seen a very picturesque lake and beautiful natural surroundings. And the area was also known to have a kiosk, which is a small convenience stand, run by a local man and often hosted campers and hikers. And it's not clear if the teens stopped at the kiosk or interacted with locals upon arriving, but they proceeded to pick a spot for their tent. And they chose a spot along the shore for pitching the tent, a flat clearing not far from the water. And by all accounts, their arrival and setup went very smoothly. And Nils and Seppo likely helped each other assemble the tent, while Mila and Anya might have laid out sleeping bags and gathered firewood. So with their camp established, the journey concluded and the leisure began. So the daylight hours of June 4th passed uneventfully, and pleasantly for the group by all accounts. And the afternoon was likely spent in typical camping pastimes, possibly swimming in the lake's cool waters, lounging on the shore, and exploring the woods. And according to later reports, nothing unusual happened during that day. The friends enjoyed each other's company and the freedom of being out in nature. And the evening of June 4th was still bright due to that white night effect. But eventually, a gray dusk settled. And at some point, the teens retired to their tent for the night. And 4 people in one tent would have been a very snug fit, and they likely arranged themselves with the couples next to each other. And based on diary evidence and witness accounts, the group did not venture away from their own campsite to socialize that night, at least not according to initial statements. So as far as the teens were concerned that night, they were alone and secure in their campsite. Now, allegedly, there was mention of the boys being drunk in Mila's diary, but they would fall asleep and woke up around 2 a.m., after which the boys got up for a bit and the girls fell immediately back to sleep. And eventually, they were all asleep inside their tent. And the night was calm, with the lake waters gently lapping in the pale night sky above. And it should have been a peaceful slumber in a beautiful place. However, as the early morning hours rolled around, an unknown terror crept toward the unsuspecting campers. Remember that doctor's appointment you were supposed to make a while ago? That one you meant to book, but You got sidetracked and completely forgot about it until now. You know, that dentist appointment for your biannual cleaning, that dermatologist appointment for that weird rash you got on your stomach. It'd be really weird if one of you actually had a weird rash on your stomach. Let me know in the comments. Or that overdue annual checkup that's been 6 years in the making. Well, why not book it today with ZocDoc? ZocDoc makes it easy to find the right doctor right now, and it's all online. And you'll probably be able to even book an appointment before the end of this ad. And we've all been there, scrolling through social media at 2 a.m. and suddenly convinced that drinking celery juice will fix all your problems. One minute you're watching someone gargle coconut oil for 20 minutes, and the next you're learning that apparently we should be sleeping on the floor now or something. And listen, I'm all for trying new things, but maybe, just maybe, we should check in with actual medical professionals instead, and that's where ZocDoc comes in. It's a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors and click to instantly book an appointment. And I did recently. I recently started going back to therapy. Your girl needed some therapy, and ZocDoc made it super easy. I've been seeing her for about 6 weeks now. She watches my content sometimes. Hey, how's it going? But we're talking more than 100,000 doctors across every specialty, from mental health to dental health, primary care to urgent care, and more. And you can filter for doctors who take your insurance as well, and are located nearby, and are a good fit for any medical need you may have, and are highly rated by verified patients. And once you find the right doctor, you can actually see their appointment openings, and then choose a time slot that works best for you, and click to instantly book a visit. And the best part is that appointments made through ZocDoc happen really fast, typically within just 24 hours to 72 hours of booking. I know I booked one day and I had an appointment the next day, and honey, I needed it, okay? And more often than not, you can even get same day appointments. So I personally use ZocDoc, and you should too. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/CCCM to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/CCCM. ZocDoc.com/CCCM. Thank you to ZocDoc for sponsoring this video and supporting the channel, and let's get back to it. So at approximately 4 to 6 a.m. on June 5th, an unknown assailant launched a frenzied attack on the 4 sleeping teenagers. And the evidence indicates that the killer struck from outside the tent, slashing and bludgeoning through the tent's fabric without ever entering it. In other words, the perpetrator used the tent itself as a barrier, blindly and swinging at the victims through the canvas walls. And the weapon was most likely a knife, possibly accompanied by a heavy blunt instrument. But the attacks were extremely violent and swift, and the teenagers were caught completely off guard because they were sleeping. And you can only imagine the confusion and terror inside that tent, with the sounds of the canvas ripping and screams of pain and the sudden realization that they were under attack. So the tent itself quickly collapsed onto the occupants during the onslaught, and much later, witnesses would recall seeing the tent in a flattened state, as if it had imploded on itself. And investigators believe the assailant first cut the tent's guy lines or supports, perhaps to trap the victims inside the tent, and then stab downward through the material. But all 4 teenagers were injured in this gruesome attack, and 3 would not survive. But despite the viciousness of the attack, none of the victims managed to escape or fully fend off the assailant, and there are no reports of any of the teens getting out of the tent to run or fight, indicating how sudden and overwhelming the ambush was. And during the frenzied stabbing and one victim, Niels Gustafsson, may have caught a fleeting glimpse of the attacker. And Gustafsson would be the lone survivor in this attack. And he would later claim that in a brief moment of half-consciousness, he saw a dark figure dressed in black with bright red eyes looming over them. And this eerie description, red eyes as if glowing, had become part of the legend of Lake Bodom. And it's unclear if this was a hallucination, a distorted memory, perhaps the attacker had some reflective material, or it was a product of trauma, or just a genuine detail. But regardless, it was the only hint of the attacker's appearance given by any of the victims. And the assault likely lasted only minutes, but was absolutely devastating. And by the time the assailant was done, 3 of the 4 friends lay dead or dying, and the lone survivor was unconscious and gravely wounded. And the killer then left as mysteriously as he had arrived. And at around 6 a.m., not long after the attack, a pair of young birdwatchers in the area reportedly noticed something odd in the distance. And they saw a collapsed tent and a blonde-haired man walking away from the campsite. And the sighting would later become a crucial, if ambiguous, clue. So the birdwatchers did not approach the site, thinking perhaps that nothing was seriously wrong. And meanwhile, the murderer vanished into the early morning mist. And the crime was over in mere moments, but its repercussions were only just beginning. So the attack's aftermath for each of the 4 campers can be pieced together from the physical evidence and forensic reports. And tragically, Mila, Anya, and Seppo all sustained fatal wounds, while Nils survived with serious injuries. So Mila suffered the worst fate of all victims. And she was found outside the tent, having been pulled or dragged partway out during the attack. And disturbingly, Mila was undressed from the waist down when discovered. And whether the assailant removed her lower clothing or it was a result of being dragged is uncertain, but the state of her attire suggested a possible motive or grotesque staging. And Mila's injuries were also the most severe, and she had been stabbed dozens of times, far more than the others. And forensic analysis indicated that many of her stab wounds were inflicted after she was already deceased. So it's kind of in line with just a very angry, sounding like personal attack, like a vengeance he had just for Mila specifically. And also, Mila's head had been hit extremely hard, causing shattering injuries. So this was just extreme overkill for Mila. And it seems to be she was like the center of this person's rage. But since Mila was Nils' girlfriend, the only survivor's girlfriend, some later theories speculated about personal jealousy or hatred directed at her. But we'll talk about that later. But in 1960, investigators could only note that she clearly bore the brunt of the killer's fury. And Mila's body was also found lying on top of the collapsed tent canvas near Nils. But there was no sign of her actually being in terms of confirmed evidence, but her being partially unclothed and the brutality left the possibility in people's mind. So Mila would die at the scene from a combination of wounds and blunt force trauma. Now, Anya's body was found inside of the tent, and she was likely attacked and killed before she had any chance to escape. And Anya's injuries, while fatal, were notably less extensive than Mila's. And she had been stabbed and hit, but not to the excessive degree of her friend Mila. And it's possible Anya died quickly from her wounds as well. But there's no indication that Anya was moved or deliberately posed either. She simply remained where she was, attacked inside the tent. And Anya's cause of death was the multiple wounds and blunt force trauma to her head as well, consistent with the same weapons that killed the others. And the horror of all this suddenness meant Anya likely never even fully awoke before she was killed. And Seppo would also be found dead inside of the tent as well. So as the other man and the oldest in the group, and one might expect he'd have resisted the attack to some degree, but the situation gave him little chance, given the fact that he was asleep most likely. And Seppo's injuries included wounds and blunt force trauma as well, similar to Anya's. And there is speculation that Seppo might have awoken and confronted the attacker for at least a moment. However, at the crime scene, Seppo's body was found inside the tent with fatal wounds, indicating he did not get that far if there was any sort of scuffle. And notably, neither Seppo nor Anya were attacked post-mortem like Mila was. So their killings, while violent, seemed straightforward by comparison. So at just 15 years old, and 18 years old, these poor teenagers lost their lives in what should have just been a safe camping trip. And then there was Nils, who was the sole survivor of this massacre. But he came exceedingly close to being the fourth fatality, because he was found alive but unconscious, lying on the ground near the tents outside, on the same side as Mila. And Nils had severe injuries. His jaw was broken, he had fractured cheekbones and a deep wound to his forehead, and he also sustained a serious concussion. And he was also covered in blood. And initially, responders thought he might die of his injuries, because he was barely clinging to life when he was discovered. And Nils was found barefoot, and notably, his shoes were missing from the scene. So it appeared he had been inside the tent during the attack and somehow ended up outside of the tent, possibly staggering out or being knocked out of the collapsed tent by the assailant. And he would collapse next to Mila. And there are differing accounts of his exact position when he was found. Some say he was on top of part of the tent canvas, others that he was just beside it. But in any case, he was within a couple of meters of the other victims. But despite his grievous wounds, Niels was still alive when help finally arrived several hours later. And he had no memory of the actual attack, likely a merciful side effect of the head trauma. And as mentioned, only later recalled and a fleeting image of the red-eyed figure in black attacking them. So Niels' survival would have major consequences. It meant there was a witness, albeit with a shattered memory, and a victim who could later be scrutinized. But on that morning in 1960, Niels was viewed purely as a victim who narrowly escaped the fate of his friends. And he was rushed to the hospital as soon as rescuers came, and his injuries were documented as consistent with being attacked by the same perpetrator who killed the others. So the scene at Lake Bodom on the morning of June 5th, 1960 was one of both confusion and horror, because the teen's tent had been collapsed onto itself, visibly torn and soaked with blood. And blood splatter and pools around the site made it clear a vicious attack had occurred. And the tent fabric had multiple slashes and punctures from the knife thrusts. And inside the tent was a disarray of sleeping bags and belongings that were drenched in blood as well. And the entire area was eerily quiet in the early light of dawn, except for the distressing sight at the campsite itself. And evidence would indicate that the killer had attacked from outside, like we were talking about before, cutting the tent open and cutting downward. But remarkably, no murder weapon was found at the scene. So neither a knife nor any blunt instrument was recovered. And this meant the assailant took the weapons with them or disposed of them somewhere. And investigators later scoured the lake and surrounding woods, but the murder weapons have never been located. And another baffling aspect was that several of the victims' personal items were missing or oddly displaced. Like the keys to the teens' motorcycles were gone, yet the motorcycles were left parked near the campsite untouched, which is odd. And wallets and some articles of clothing were also reported missing. And most peculiarly, Niels Gustafsson's shoes were nowhere to be found at the campsite. So this was strange because one would expect shoes to be left by the tent entrance or inside. And an intensive search was launched for these missing items. And in the days to follow, some of the missing clothing and Niels' shoes were discovered about 500 meters, which is about a half a kilometer, away from the tent, hidden. It was as if the perpetrator had gathered certain items and stashed or tossed them while fleeing, and the shoes in particular would later become crucial evidence. But in 1960, it was simply perplexing to find them so far from Niels, who, again, was found barefoot. So why would a random killer take the time to remove and hide a victim's shoes? Doesn't really add up or make sense. I mean, none of this makes sense, but that's particularly odd. So the crime scene presented investigators with a chaotic mix of clues. Intense violence, missing belongings, no obvious motive, and also notable, aside from the birdwatcher's account of a blonde man walking away at dawn, there were no eyewitnesses to the crime itself. And the other campers in the area did not hear screams, or if they did not realize what it was. And it's possible that any cries were muffled by the tent and the quick, incapacitating nature of the attack. And the scene was remote enough that help did not arrive until hours later, meaning the crime scene sat exposed to the morning. And sadly, the way the scene was handled next would introduce its own set of problems. Well, October's here, and while everyone else is picking out costumes, smart entrepreneurs are getting ready for the biggest sales season of the year. And that's exactly why I run Sour Boys with Oompaville, aka Caleb, aka my husband, on Shopify. Because it's stressful enough running your own business, like we literally have no help, it's just us, with a small team of family and friends, but Shopify makes it so much easier. And look, we've all been there, juggling a million different platforms, drowning in logins, trying to keep track of inventory here, and sales there, and social media somewhere else. It's enough to drive anyone crazy. But Shopify changed everything for us, truly, because everything's in one place, and we can sell Sour Boys online, at events, even directly through social media where you're already scrolling. So between recording podcasts and creating content, I can check our orders from my phone, which is really handy, and keep my team updated even though we're all in different locations a lot of the time. And Shopify basically operates as your back office, so you don't need a full staff watching over everything. Plus, their AI tools like Shopify Magic are a total game changer. It's like having a little assistant for everything from content ideas to inventory reports. And here's the thing, the entrepreneurs who win in December, they're the ones building right now in October. So whether you want to test out a merch idea or you're ready to launch that product you've been dreaming about, this is your window to set yourself up for the holiday rush. So if you're ready to make your next big move, head to shopify.com/CCCM, because your dreams aren't a conspiracy, they're real and they're worth fighting for. So don't let other platforms leave a sour taste in your mouth. Sour Boys pun. And get started today at shopify.com/CCCM. Thank you to Shopify for supporting this channel and sponsoring this video, and let's get back to it. So despite the attack occurring around dawn, around 4 to 6 a.m., it would be several hours before the victims were actually found and help arrived. And the first people to notice something was wrong were the aforementioned small group of boys who were out bird watching in the area around 6 a.m. And they continued on their way, not immediately realizing that they may have witnessed a murderer fleeing. And as a result, the crime scene remained unattended for several more hours. And it wasn't until 11 a.m. that the bodies were officially discovered. And a local man named Risto Siren, identified in some reports as a jogger or carpenter out for a morning walk, came upon the campsite and saw the carnage. And he saw the tent flattened and bloodied, and the unmistakable sight of bodies either on top or inside the tent. And I can't imagine how he felt seeing this. But luckily, Risto immediately alerted authorities, and he contacted the police, who arrived at the scene by noon on June 5th. And some sources alternatively name a carpenter called Esko Ova Johansson as the discoverer. So it's possible that Johansson and Siren are the same person, or one of these people accompanied the other, or one did find it first or by the other. So I'm not positive on that, but those are the two names we have. But regardless, the key point is that a local adult found the victims late in the morning and called police. So when police and medics arrived to this horror show in front of them, to their surprise and relief, they found Niels Gustafsson still alive, despite his severe injuries. So medics quickly extracted Niels and rushed him to the hospital in Helsinki for emergency treatment. And the other 3 teenagers were confirmed dead at the scene. And the police began to secure the area, but crucially, their approach to the crime scene would be later seen as disastrously lax. Initially, however, their focus was on the possibility of catching the perpetrator nearby and gathering obvious evidence. So they had the birdwatchers report, which gave them a rough timeline, and the murders likely happened shortly before that sighting, and the time of discovery at 11 a.m. meant the killer had around a 5-hour head start to escape, which is a lot of time. So law enforcement conducted a search of the vicinity, hoping the murderer or any weapon might still be around, but found nothing immediate. Meanwhile, news that 3 teens were slain at Lake Bodom spread very quickly, drawing curiosity and alarm. And unfortunately, as more people flocked to the scene and investigators swarmed in, the integrity of the physical evidence on site would suffer greatly. But the first priority was interviewing the only person who might tell them what happened. And that was the survivor, Niels Gustafsson. So Niels obviously was in no condition to give a full statement immediately, and he was transported to the hospital and treated for his broken jaw and other injuries. But when he was able to talk, Niels described the events as he remembered them, which unfortunately wasn't much. And he claimed to have little to no memory of the actual attack, likely due to his concussion and trauma. But Niels asserted that the night had been uneventful until he woke up in pain during the assault. And he recalled seeing a shadowy figure dressed in black attacking the tent, and said that this person had bright red eyes, an image that stuck with him from that split-second glance. But beyond that, Niels could not recount a clear sequence of events. and he did not remember any argument or disturbance before the attack, reinforcing that it just came without any sort of warning. And he couldn't say how he ended up outside the tent either. And presumably, he lost consciousness at some point in the struggle and woke up much later in the hospital. And over the days and weeks after the incident, Niels was interviewed multiple times, but his story remained that he remembered almost nothing. And this frustrated investigators who hoped for an indication or at least a clue. And the birdwatcher's comment of seeing a man with blonde hair wasn't much to go on. And it was a slim lead in Finland, especially, where blonde hair is very common. So it didn't narrow things down much at all. And importantly, at this early stage, police considered Niels Gustafsson a victim, not a suspect, because his injuries were so severe and extensive that it seemed implausible he was anything but an attacked party. In fact, decades after, Gustafsson's consistent claim was that he suffered a memory blackout and survived by luck, and he was generally believed. But Niels' last memory before the attack, aside from the attacker's image, was of the friends happily arriving and settling in the campsite itself. And everything after that turned into a nightmare he largely could not recall. So this incomplete account, with no motive, no clear perpetrator identity, meant that from the very beginning, the Lake Bodom case hinged more on physical evidence and investigative work than eyewitness testimony. And with Niels unable to name or describe the assailant in detail, the police had to cast a wide net in their investigation. And unfortunately, as they started that process, some critical mistakes would be made. And one of those major mistakes was that the police didn't cordon off the campsite adequately. Because after they arrived around noon, multiple officers and even volunteers traipsed through the site without full regard for preserving evidence. In fact, crowds of people, including other police, locals, journalists, and curiosity seekers, were allowed to wander around the scene in the immediate aftermath, which doesn't make sense to me, but okay, it's a different time, I guess. Not really. The 60s, there's a lot of crime going on anyway. But the result was that footprints, potential trace evidence, and the original positions of items got trampled or moved. And later analysis slammed this as a serious contamination of the crime scene. And another issue was record keeping, because reports suggest that investigators failed to systemically document the scene before disturbing it. And photographs were far and few between, with only a handful of crime scene photos that actually exist. And some were taken after things had been moved, so useless, essentially. And precise measurements of distances and items' locations were not logged, which would severely handicap the forensics. So recognizing that items were missing, like the keys, wallets, clothing, and shoes, the police organized a search of all the surrounding area. And in doing so, they made yet another blunder by bringing in soldiers to comb the woods around the lake. And while well-intentioned, this resulted in dozens of additional people stomping through potential evidence zones, but the soldiers and searchers, as we know, did manage to find some of the missing items, as mentioned, like Gustafsson's shoes and some clothing about 500 meters away. But several items, including the motorcycle keys and presumably the murder weapons, were never found. And these just early lapses gave the killer a tremendous advantage, because by the time the scene was cleared of contamination, any subtle clues like fingerprints, hair fibers, or shoe prints from the perpetrator were likely destroyed or hopelessly intermixed with others. And investigators were largely left with the victims' bodies and belongings as evidence, plus the accounts of the people like the birdwatchers. And another challenge was motive, as the crime did not immediately suggest one. Robbery didn't fit well since valuable motorcycles were left and only some personal items taken, possibly as trophies potentially, because we know killers do that. And S was considered because of Mila's state, but aside from her being partially unclothed, evidence was inconclusive. And an S motive also didn't explain the males being killed as well. And a crime of passion or personal conflict seemed unlikely given all victims were presumably friends and asleep at the time. So police were dealing with a bizarre, seemingly senseless massacre. And in the absence of obvious leads, they started exploring the idea of an outside attacker just roaming the area. And they questioned local residents and known troublemakers. And early on, one name emerged from locals' whispers. And that was a man who ran a nearby kiosk who had a reputation for hostility towards campers. And we'll discuss this soon. However, initially, officers had no hard evidence against any particular individual, and no clear suspect emerged in the initial phase. The only description was the blonde man seen walking away and the red-eyed man in black. So police created a rough composite image based on the sighting and Neil's vague recollection. And basically, it was just a generic idea of a blonde, possibly tall man. So you might as well have just drawn a stick man. And checkpoints were not immediately set up, because by the time they considered it, hours had passed and any culprit was long gone. And as days turned into weeks, the investigation just continued to struggle. And the botched crime scene handling meant that a wealth of forensic evidence was lost. And one newspaper even later harshly criticized the police, noting that careless onlookers and even curious campers all but destroyed the murder scene after police had left. And in these early weeks, investigators did their best with traditional detective work, interviewing anyone who might have been near Lake Bodom, checking alibis of local ex-convicts or mentally unstable individuals, and sending out alerts in case a bloodied suspect turned up at a hospital. And one actually did. But with each passing day, no arrest was made and the case began to cool down. And the groundwork, or lack thereof, laid in this initial investigation would deeply affect the decades to come. And leads that might have been solved with solid evidence turned into mere speculation. But still, the police did pursue several theories and suspects in the months and years after the murders, and some plausible, some more far-fetched. And we'll now turn to those suspects and theories that emerged as detectives and the public tried to answer the burning question: who killed the teens at Lake Bodom? So with an unknown assailant at large and a community in fear, numerous suspects and theories surfaced in the aftermath of the Lake Bodom murders. And investigators looked at local characters with bad reputations, potential drifters or outsiders, and even the surviving victim himself. And over the years, speculation ran rampant. So early on, attention focused on a local resident named Carl Vandemar Hjulstrom, infamously nicknamed Kiosk Man because he ran a small kiosk in the campground near Lake Bodom. And Hjulstrom was well known in the community, and not for good reasons, because he had a history of hostility toward campers and young people in the area. And locals recounted that he would often shout at or harass people who came near his property. In fact, he was said to have cut down tents and thrown rocks at visitors he didn't like. Not a nice guy. So this pattern of aggressive, antisocial behavior made him an immediate person of interest when a campsite full of teens was savagely attacked. And many in town quietly suspected Hjulstrom from the start. And some even claimed to have seen him behaving oddly on the morning of the murders. And according to later accounts, several witnesses said they saw Hjulstrom returning from the direction of the campsite that morning, looking wet as if he'd been in the lake. But these people were too afraid at the time to inform police of this. And Hjulstrom's own wife initially provided him an alibi, saying he had been home in bed with her during the early hours of June 5th, thus supposedly unable to be the killer. And police interviewed Hjulstrom and searched his property, but found no hard evidence linking him to this crime. So this kiosk man denied any sort of involvement, and aside from community rumors and his general creepy demeanor, investigators had nothing concrete. And they remained skeptical of the secondhand reports of his drunken confessions or supposed knowledge of the crime. Because it was said that Hjulstrom, when heavily intoxicated, allegedly blurted out confessions to the murders on multiple occasions. Which is pretty suspicious to me, but okay. But when sober, he would either deny it or was just dismissed as a mentally disturbed individual. And police at the time chalked up his wild statements to him just being quote-unquote disturbed and did not pursue any charges. However, Hjulstrom continued to draw suspicion, and he did nothing to help his own case in 1969 when he died by drowning in Lake Bodom, apparently by himself from. And according to local lore, Hjulstrom in a final note or conversation hinted at guilt for the murders, though the exact details are murky. And after his death, a haunting revelation would come. And on her deathbed years later, Hjulstrom's wife recanted the alibi she had given him. And she confessed that she had lied to the police out of fear, implying that Hjulstrom had not been home at the time of the murders and that he had threatened to kill her if she revealed the truth. So this posthumous admission by the wife gave enormous weight to the theory that the kiosk keeper was the Bodum murderer. And villagers recalled that just days after the murders, Hjulstrom had filled in a well in his yard with concrete. So it was speculated that he might have hidden the murder weapons or bloody clothing in the well. And police later did excavate or examine the property, but found nothing. Nonetheless, Hjulstrom remains one of the most popular suspect candidates in the public eye. He had motive, if seething hatred for campers or teenagers is a motive, and possible opportunity, because he lived nearby, and just a general proclivity for violence. And in books and discussions, Hjulstrom's name often comes up as the likely culprit, a grumpy misanthrope who took his anger out on 4 innocent kids. But officially, however, Hjulstrom was never charged, and with his death, the lead effectively died with him. And the case file on him remains circumstantial. And police in later years stated they could not conclusively place him at the scene, and thus he is an unproven but strongly suspected figure in the Bodum case. So beyond the local kiosk man, investigators and amateur sleuths have scrutinized several other potential suspects, and 2 stand out for the level of attention that they've received. 1 is Hans Osman, and 2 is Pentti Soininen. And each represents a very different profile. 1, a mysterious outsider with alleged spy connections, and the other, a troubled youth who confessed under dubious circumstances. But let's talk about Hans first. And this name recurs in multiple Finnish unsolved cases, practically achieving a boogeyman status. Because Hans was a German-born, naturalized Finn who lived not far from Lake Bodum. And rumors swirled that he had been a soldier, even an SS guard at Auschwitz, and later possibly a KGB spy in Finland during the Cold War. Not people you want to be associated with necessarily. And whether or not the espionage tales are true, what put Osman in the Bodum investigators' sights was his suspicious hospital visit on June 6, 1960. Remember when I mentioned that there was a man that walked in bloody at a hospital that night? This is the man. Because the very day after the murders, according to hospital staff in Helsinki, Osman showed up wearing clothes covered in red stains and with black dirt under his fingernails. And he behaved nervously and even pretended to faint or be unconscious at one point. And doctors who examined him believed the red stains on his clothing were blood, and they noted his agitated state as well. And considering the timing, this was a giant red flag. So the hospital alerted the police about this strange patient. However, when briefly questioned, Osman had an alibi, and the police stated that he was able to account for his whereabouts during the Bodum murders. And some sources say authorities claimed Osman was in Germany at the time, and others say he was in Helsinki, but with someone. And in any case, the police seemingly accepted the alibi and did not confiscate his clothing for testing, which is an oversight that later drew a lot of criticism, which is deserved, in my opinion. But Osman notably also matched the limited description of the suspected killer, because he had long blonde hair at the time and was fairly tall, and he looked eerily similar to the police sketch of the suspect. And intriguingly, after a newspaper published the birdwatcher's account of a blonde man seen leaving the tent, Osman cut his long hair short. Ooh, that's suspicious as well. And to some, this signaled a guilty conscience altering his appearance, and Osman's name would surface in popular books years later, accusing him of not only the Bodum murders, but other unsolved killings in Finland. And a former doctor named Jorma Palo, who had seen Osman at the hospital, became convinced of his guilt and authored several books outlining a theory of Osman as a serial killer protected due to secret connections. So it's an interesting one, and it goes deep into, authority figures and government and cover-ups and all this kind of stuff, which at this day and age, I wouldn't even put it past them at this point, but I don't know. One theory even posited that Osman's possible intelligence ties caused authorities to hush up or ignore evidence against him, essentially a cover-up scenario. And it is a very dramatic speculation, but it obviously caught the public's imagination. But Osman would die in the late 1990s, but not before reportedly confessing on his deathbed to at least one murder, though it's unclear if that referred to Bodum or another case. So officially, the police in 2005 reiterated that Osman had a verified alibi and was not considered a suspect by the original investigation. But to this day, many Finnish true crime enthusiasts think Hans Osman could have been the killer who slipped away. And then there's the lesser-known suspect, which is Pentti Soininen. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. But he was a troubled Finnish man who, during the mid-1960s, was serving a prison sentence for other crimes. And he allegedly boasted to a fellow inmate that he was responsible for the Lake Bodum murders. But what do we know about criminals? They just love confessing shit. Just about anything. Just because they want, like, props in jail. But nevertheless, this jailhouse confession was taken seriously enough that he came under police scrutiny. However, a glaring fact undermines this claim, and that is that he was only about 14 years old at the time of the murders. So at 14, could he realistically have overpowered 4 older teenagers, 2 of whom were 18-year-old boys? And many, including the police, found that highly doubtful. And even if armed, a lone 14-year-old would likely struggle to subdue an entire group, especially with Seppo and Nils present. And some have speculated about him being a part of a larger group of assailants, but no evidence of multiple attackers was ever found. So inconsistencies in his story and lack of corroboration led authorities to view his confession with a lot of skepticism. I just think he just wants street cred in jail. And he would die by deleting himself from life in 1969, the same year Hjulström did, before anything could be conclusively verified. So we'll never know. So with his death, this line of inquiry hit a dead end. And Soininen is generally considered an unlikely suspect, but his name occasionally arises when cataloging all who have claimed responsibility. So aside from named suspects, a few broader theories have circulated. And one is a possibility of a random drifter or foreigner passing through who committed the murders and then disappeared. But Finland in 1960 had relatively low crime, and a crime this violent was just unprecedented, prompting ideas of an outsider perpetrator. And some thought perhaps a violent escapee prison or military deserter, because there was an army base in the region, might have done it. And another theory poses that it was some kind of twisted revenge or vendetta. For instance, had one of the teens angered someone who then followed them to the campsite? But there's no evidence of any vendetta that ever emerged. And of course, there were those who whispered about supernatural or occult explanations, especially given the red eyes detail Nils mentioned. But those are firmly in the realm of legend. And by the 2000s, virtually every human suspect theory had been explored to some degree, with Hjulström and Osman remaining the public's top picks for the likely culprits. Until a bombshell twist placed suspicion on someone who had long been presumed innocent. And that's the survivor, Nils Gustafsson. So for 40 years, Nils Gustafsson was regarded as the unfortunate sole survivor of the Bodum attack, a victim left with physical and emotional scars. When Finnish police stunned the country by announcing that they had solved the case, and they were charging Gustafsson with the murders. Now, this development was nothing short of shocking. So how the heck did investigators come to suspect Nils after so many years? And the answer lies in a combination of new forensic analysis and revived witness testimony, which together formed a circumstantial case against him. So the cold case was reopened in the early 2000s by the Finnish National Bureau of Investigation. And with advances in DNA technology, forensic scientists re-examined the old evidence, including bloodstains on clothing and the tent. And one key finding was that Gustafsson's shoes, which recall had been found hidden 500 meters from the scene, had blood from the 3 slain victims on them, but none of Nils' own blood. Interesting. And this was a crucial clue for the prosecution. And their interpretation was that if an unknown attacker had bloodied Nils along with the others, Nils' own blood should be on his shoes. So the absence suggested that Nils was not wearing the shoes at the time he bled, i.e. when he sustained the injuries. And instead, the only blood on the shoes was from the other 3, implying the shoes were worn during the killing of the others. Because everybody else's blood was on his shoes, but his own blood wasn't on his shoes. As if he killed them and hid his shoes because he had killed them and there was blood on them and it made him look guilty. So, in the prosecutor's scenario, after killing his friends, Niels removed his shoes, now stained with victims and his friends' blood, and hid them, then later injured himself, accounting for his blood not being on his shoes. Now, this forensic reinterpretation was the backbone of the case against him. And investigators also revisited witness statements. Notably, there was a woman camper who came forward and she claimed Niels and Seppo had drunkenly visited her tent on the evening before the murders and that Niels was acting aggressive. And this new testimony puts Niels' character in question, suggesting he might have been intoxicated and agitated that very night. So the prosecutors would weave a theory. Niels Gustafsson, in a jealous rage, murdered his friends. And according to their narrative, the 4 teens may have been drinking and Niels became drunk and belligerent. And conflict would ensue, possibly a fight between Niels and Seppo, perhaps over something like Niels making advances towards Seppo's girlfriend or an argument about the girls in general. And in this supposed altercation, Seppo may have punched Niels, breaking Niels' jaw, which matches Niels' injury, and enraged by the fight and perhaps humiliated, the idea of a bruised male ego was floated during this trial. Niels was said to have snapped, and the prosecution suggested that Niels then turned violent, and he may have attacked Mila first in a frenzy of jealousy or anger, and this would explain why Mila's injuries were so extreme. As Niels' girlfriend, maybe he targeted her in a jealous fury, and why her injuries were so much more severe. And then after she was deceased, then he went to eliminate the witnesses, who were Anya and Seppo. And in this scenario, Seppo's earlier fight injury to Niels accounts for Niels' broken facial bones. And after killing the others, Niels then staged the scene to look like an outside attack. And the prosecutors alleged he hid some of their belongings to suggest robbery, hence taking wallets and keys, and he also removed his shoes, which were now covered in his own friend's blood, and hid them far away, likely in the early dawn, explaining the birdwatchers seeing a blonde man walking away. Then, in a final gruesome step, Niels injured himself, and they proposed that he used either a rock or the tent pole to hit himself in the face, causing additional superficial stab wounds and worsening his concussion. And this was all to make it appear that he had been attacked as well. And finally, he collapsed on top of the tent and pretended to be unconscious as cover. So this was a dramatic sounding theory. To me, it sounds like the most likely, to be honest. Essentially accusing the victim of being the perpetrator after decades. It was a long shot. And when Niels Gustafsson, by then a 62-year-old retired bus driver, was arrested in March of 2004, it made headlines across Finland. And many found it hard to believe that the quiet man who had lived blamelessly for years was secretly a murderer. Yet the police insisted they had evidence and formally charged him, leading to a trial in 2005. And during the trial, in August of 2005, the prosecution laid out the case I just described. And they pointed to the DNA blood evidence on the shoes, the witness who placed Niels drunk and aggressive that night, and even an alleged incriminating remark from Niels. And one police officer testified that while in custody, Niels had muttered, "What's done is done. I'll get 15 years. Huh? What did you say, Niels? Could you say that again? On camera? What's going on? Implying a subconscious confession that he expected to go to prison. And the prosecution also had the 2 birdwatchers claim that the man they saw leaving the scene was indeed Niels, but the defense would dispute that identification. And they argued that no other suspect matched the evidence as well as Gustafsson did, and that his motive was plausible given jealousy or intoxicated rage. And Niels Gustafsson's defense team, led by attorney Rita Lapinami, fought back vigorously. And they argued that the entire case was speculative and that Gustafsson could not have physically done it given his injuries. And they brought in experts to say that a person with a broken jaw and a concussion would have been unlikely to overpower 3 people and then calmly stage a scene, walking half a kilometer to hide items before injuring himself further. So the defense cast doubt on the reliability of the new witness as well, the woman camper, who came forward after 45 years. And they pointed out Mila's personal diary from the day of June 4th, 1960, that made no mention of any such visit to another tent, which it surely would have if something unusual had occurred. That's what they're saying. And they suggested this woman's memory might be faulty or influenced by the documentary process. And they also highlighted the contaminated crime scene. And any blood pattern conclusions to draw so many years later could be questionable, they said, because evidence was compromised. And the defense noted that no murder weapon was connected to Niels, and that none of the missing items were found in his possession. And importantly, they argued that the original eyewitness accounts consistently indicated someone else. And the blonde man seen walking away was initially assumed to be the killer, not Gustafsson lying injured on the ground. In other words, the third-party involvement was more likely. This is what defense is saying. And they said that if Niels' blood was absent on the shoes, a simpler explanation was that he wasn't wearing them when attacked. And perhaps he was sleeping barefoot, or the killer removed them for some unknown reason. And that didn't automatically mean he was the murderer, which, is fair. He could be not wearing shoes when he's sleeping, and that makes sense. But the trial captured national attention, and after weeks of testimony, on October 7th, 2005, the court delivered its verdict. And that was that Niels Gustafsson was acquitted of all charges. And the judges found that the evidence was insufficient and too contradictory to convict. And the DNA on the shoes raised suspicions but did not prove Niels' guilt beyond reasonable doubt, especially given the alternative interpretations. And the alleged motive was deemed speculative. And there was no direct evidence of a jealousy-fueled fight, strong enough to trigger mass murder. And the long passage of time had adamantly made certainty impossible, as the court noted. So the presumption of innocence had to prevail. And after 44 years of being considered a victim, Niels Gustafsson walked out a free man, legally innocent and exonerated. And he was awarded $44,900 by the state as compensation for the mental suffering caused by the wrongful detainment and trial. And Gustafsson, who had always maintained he had no memory and no guilt, expressed relief at the verdict. But despite the acquittal, opinions remained divided. Some in the public, swayed by the prosecution's narrative, still harbor suspicions about Gustafsson. And others believe he was just as much as a victim as the friends he lost, and that the real killer was someone else who just got away with it. And the trial's aftermath left an uneasy feeling, because if Niels wasn't the killer, then the case was back to square one, unsolved, cold case. And if he was, then justice might not have been truly served given the acquittal. But officially, with Gustafsson cleared and no other active suspects, the Lake Bodom murders returned to cold case status after 2005. And no one has ever been convicted for the crime. And to this day, the question of who slaughtered those innocent teens by the lake is unanswered. And all the prominent suspects, including Hjulstrom, Osman, Soininen, and Gustafsson, are either deceased or legally absolved, leaving the Bodom case cold. But let me know what you guys think down below. It's hard. It's hard. We have all this information now, and for me, just looking at the brutality of the murder, especially of the significant other, and where they were and everything, it is absolutely possible that someone could have been fixated on this group and done something like this, but if we're looking statistically, it's usually someone that you know. So in that regard, it looks like that, and with the broken jaw and all this, I don't know. I have no idea. All I know is that I feel horribly for the victims' families and for the victims themselves. No one deserves to die, especially as young as they were, and it's just horrible. But I hope that one day it can be solved, but it doesn't look like it ever can be, given all the suspects are dead or absolved. So I'm not sure, but all I know is that these were horrible murders and the families deserve justice. But let me know what you guys think down below. Also, let me know what other cases you want me to cover down below. I always read the comments, and I will see your beautiful face in the next video. Okay? Stay safe.
Is your dog ready to be a Quattro dog? For full safety information, side effects, and warnings, click Learn More or visit CredeliaQuattroLabel.com. Consult your vet or call 1-888-545-5973.
Experian is your big financial friend, helping you explore credit card offers with confidence. Some cards are labeled no ding decline, which means if you're not approved, they won't hurt your credit score. See Experian.com for details. Applying for cards labeled no ding decline won't hurt your credit scores if you aren't initially approved.
Oh, it's chilly in here. Oh, God, it's freezing in here, isn't it? Isn't it? Could you help me out? Could you just stare into my fireplace for like a couple seconds? I feel like that might help. Keep doing it. Keep staring. It's because you're on fire. Get it? Hello, everybody, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, or welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Call Me Chris. You can call me Chris, and today we're having just a chill, relaxing day. I'm not gonna lie, I've had a really bad week, and that doesn't even include all the stuff that's going on in the world, just in my personal life, and I'm not gonna get into it, but, you know, hold your loved ones close and stuff. But, you know, I just think that we could just do a little bit of reading Reddit, you know? I hope that's okay with you guys. I know for Saturdays I'm trying to do like more laid back fun videos. I feel like this counts. So, but I haven't really had a lot of time to like plan ahead, so I thought this could be okay. Let me know what you guys think down below and everything. I like talking to you guys in the comments. Let me know what you think about all the stories and all that kind of stuff.
Who would you rather have run our country right now, your wife or him?
Highlights this woke liberal TikTok clown debate went hard. But if you guys want to see days, and I have the link in the description.
Equality between man and woman, you know, the Bible says that God created them man and woman, so we're both created with dignity and should be respected, and there's an equality before God that we both have. But we were created with two distinct and different natures. You know, they are two essential. Maleness and femaleness are essential about a person. They're essential to the soul. They're essential to the body. They come with a function. They come with a particular anatomy. They come with a brain chemistry. And as such, those things have social roles. The idea that, you know, these clearly two distinct categories, two essential types of people would be treated precisely the same or exactly the same in society, it belies the fact that they have two different natures. And I think it's obvious that men are celestial, they're individualists, they're rationalists, they're leaders, they're risk takers. They should be working, fighting, running society. Women are terrestrial, they're nurturers, they're caregivers. They should be the mothers. I don't think that they should be necessarily precluded from working. But I think that they should be encouraged first and foremost to be mothers for their benefit and for the benefit of society as a whole. And that's kind of the gist of my position.
Okay, so I have an opening statement. I guess I'll use it up. My position's pretty clear. No, one human being does not have more intrinsic moral value than another human being. I don't think that we could take this qualification of your gender identity or what's in between your legs and abstract that out to this norm of who's going to be better at leading. I'd say the qualifications of determining who's better at leading, the qualifications of determining, you know, half the shit that he named off over here is not going to be, right, what's in between your legs or your gender identity, but rather other various traits. But I guess just to make this quick, we could kind of cut to the chase here. Why do you think men are better at leading than women? I would appreciate specifics. You kind of pointed out like different natures, different biological differences, neuroanatomy, etc. I want you to name the specifics. Maybe I could ask you a question here. What are the specific biological differences between men and women that make men better at leading than women?
Smarter, stronger, all of the above. No, I mean, in actuality,
Be specific.
In actuality, what?
Are those your two qualifiers?
No, I'm being a little bit funny.
Well, be honest with me here.
The reason why they're better leaders, well, one, I think they're really only qualified to be leaders because they are physically stronger. And, you know, this is one of the reasons why we have a feminist society. It's because we live in a world where we have technology. In the old days, when there was fighting, it was very physical and it was very direct. It was hand-to-hand combat, and the only people that could do it were men. As such, the militaries that were raised up were comprised of men, the people that fought and enforced sovereignty, law, borders, all those things were men necessarily, then they're the decision makers. And so, the idea that it has something to do with what's between your legs, well, it has to do with what's between your legs and the fact that you have testosterone. You're physically stronger. And by the way, because you have testosterone, it means you're more aggressive. It means you're a bigger risk taker. Those are two things that are important. For a person to be a leader, they need to be able to stand against the crowd. And that means a risk taker. It means you need to be disagreeable. It involves a certain amount of aggression and a competitiveness that women simply lack. We all know that women are very agreeable, passive. Not all of them, but generally speaking, they are. They're peacemakers. They're more introspective. They're more emotional, less decisive. And all of that makes them worse as leaders. Now, there can be women that are good in particular leadership roles in certain circumstances, and individual women might. But as a general rule, because of their nature, they don't make good leaders.
Okay, thank you so much for your response there. Let's talk about it all. One of the reasons that you gave me that men are better at leading than women is physical strength. That is a totally and completely moot point. You would not be able to name me one social category in the world today where leadership is determined on purely physical strength. I also bet that you would not be willing to vote for a 15-year-old on steroids that can bench press 600 pounds over Donald Trump just because he's physically stronger. Another point that you brought up is that women are more emotional than men. I'd actually say that's false. 72% of people who commit suicide are men. 85% of people that abuse hard drugs as an emotional reaction to like particular external stimuli are men. We see that 95% of violent crimes are committed by men. We see that men are much more likely to start wars, to start genocides. We see that men are much more likely to engage in irrational, risk-adverse activities such as drunk driving, reckless driving, or gambling. Meanwhile, we see women have a higher IQ and EQ on average. Women outperform men in the context of school, going to it more, getting better grades and better degrees. And we see that women could actually deal with stress better than men. And that's one of those biological predispositions that you were talking about. Women have thicker dendrites in their neuroanatomy compared to men, for the reason being that evolution has designed women to deal with childbirth, okay? Right? And that made them deal with stress better as well. That's why we see that female surgeons outcompete male surgeons. The JMA and the AMA did a massive study on 1.7 million patients on 6 continents and evaluated that if you're operated on by a male compared to a female, that you're more likely to die as a result of your surgery and you're more likely to experience postoperative outcomes. So, just a quick recap. Physical strength doesn't mean shit. I have bigger biceps than you. I bet you think you're a better leader. Emotional maturity. Women are more emotionally mature than men. Then about intelligence and all the other shit you brought up. We could get into that, but I'll let you respond to the points that I brought up so far.
Yeah, so you said it was risk averse to gamble and drunk drive. It's the opposite. And you said men are more willing to drunk drive and gamble. Those are risk-taking activities, and risk-taking is fundamental in leadership.
Yeah,
that's why, yeah, fair enough. And that's why, the richest people in the world are all men, because the entrepreneurs are men, because an entrepreneur is a risk taker. And, one man's gambling is another man's entrepreneurship. One man's drunk driving is another man's self-destructive, obsessive, maniacal quest for, building the best company or being the president or anything like that. It's absolutely essential. With regard to higher IQ and EQ, it is true that on average women have a higher IQ, but it's also true that the distribution is different. There's more geniuses among men. I mean, the curve, if you will, is flatter. So there's more men that are on the left side of the curve. There's more men on the right side of the curve. Although the average for women is higher, they don't have those outliers and those extremes. That's why you don't see a lot of female geniuses, and that's just true. I mean, earlier today in preparation for the debate, I asked ChatGPT, I said, name some female geniuses. They got to like 3 before they had to name a feminist. They did like Marie Curie, some ancient Neoplatonist no one ever heard of, and then it was like all the like first and second wave feminists. There's no female geniuses. There's very few female billionaires that didn't get their wealth outside of divorce. There's very few female heads of state. People say that's oppression, it's misogyny, and we all know it's because they're not risk takers, they're not tough. With regard to they handle stress better, Yeah, maybe certain kinds of stress, but I think we all know women, and I think we all know that when women are put in stressful situations, they
my
crumble.
God.
They
So
cry,
my
they
evidence-
cry, they get upset, they freak out, they call their boyfriend, they call their father. Hang on. I'll let you go on. I'll let you go on, and you said that ridiculous stuff. Hang on, let me finish. I'll wrap up, but I let you finish, and I let you say that women handle stress better. That's insane. Okay? And with regard to physical strength, look, I said today, physical strength is not a qualifier because of techniques, because we have missiles, we have tanks and things like that. But the point is, it used to be the case that what qualified you to lead is that you would go out there and be doing the fighting and all of that. And that is still true. It's not necessarily true in the United States, but it is still true in other countries. In countries like Israel, for example, or Iran, their presidents and their ministers are frequently military leaders that are actually having to be in the tanks and in the battlefield. And, it's hard to be in the battlefield when you get your period. It's hard to be in the battlefield if you're pregnant or something like that. Men don't get pregnant. Men don't get their period. Men are physically stronger. Men have more endurance. That's why, by the way, it's not just that they're stronger, they're faster, they're all the above. That's why women don't compete with men in sports. That's why men make better soldiers. And so, it kind of does matter that if there's a war, men are going to be the ones fighting and dying it, and that's why they're leading. And there's something deeply related to their biology there as well. But go ahead, since you want to interrupt me already.
Yeah, let's do something here. I've kind of felt this way the entire time that we've been having the discussion. I feel like we both like to talk a lot. I think that that's been evidently clear. We just kind of go at each other with these 2 to 3 minute responses. Can I ask something from you?
What is it? Depends on what it is.
I kind of want to break down each point you've brought up and demonstrate to you why it's flawed instead of just giving these long-winded responses.
You want to do a fact check?
5 minutes, guys.
And I want to do that point by point with our last 5 minutes. The first point about physical strength. Who would you rather vote for? A 15-year-old that can bench press 1,000 pounds or Donald Trump?
But that's not what I'm not saying that the most physically strong person should be the king. I'm saying that
what are you saying?
as a category, women are not soldiers. They're not tasked with defending the country, and that is effectively what the king or the president is supposed to do, is defend the realm.
Didn't Trump dodge the draft 5 times?
Oh my. Okay, so are we just going to do the resistance liberal thing now? I said the United States, techniques notwithstanding. Are you capable of understanding a concept?
Can non-soldiers defend the country?
President Bone Spurs. We're talking about whether women should be leaders if they can't physically defend the borders.
Okay, so you'd say the weaker you are physically speaking, the worse you are at leading.
No.
So then what the fuck is your argument?
Yeah, it's like you're not even listening. I said as a category, because sex is
a category that's not going to be indicative of leadership ability. When the question is, why are men better at leading than women? Why do you name a category where we see these general biological distinctions between men and women if it's not indicative of men being better at leading than women? I asked you to name the specific biological differences between men and women that make men better at leading than women. You said strength was one of them, and now you're saying it's not. You're saying that emotional intelligence was one of them, then you conceded that women are more emotionally intelligent than men. Another point that you brought up was intelligence, specifically IQ, with the highest geniuses of the men being smarter than that of the women. I'd say there's going to be some social, some social aspects thrown in there. I mean, if you look at the average IQ of an Arab individual compared to a white individual at home here in the U.S., the white individual has a higher IQ. But then if you go to an Arab-dominated country in the Middle East, you'll see that the Arab individual has a higher IQ. What this means is that socialization, access to opportunity, and resources can play in, right, to your deviated IQ. So of course we'd see more men having higher IQs at the end of the spectrum compared to women, just because they have more opportunity, resources, and access to education.
Oh, it's because of misogyny. It's misogyny, right? Women are dumb because of misogyny.
Well, actually, I'd say that not being in the top 10% of IQ
let me ask you a question. You
asked
me questions. Let me ask you a question. I want to ask you a question about leadership. What do you think are good leadership traits? Can you give me some examples of what good leadership traits are?
That's a great question, and I think I'll give you a great answer. We could talk about a good, morally virtuous character. We could talk about ability to get along with other people, bring people together, and get them to follow you. Another thing that I'd say, a good leader isn't just someone who could bring people together, but a good leader is also someone that can lead those people into a positive direction. The reason that leadership exists in the first place is because when you take a large group of people and you set them on their own paths, they're not gonna get shit done. Thereby, you choose one of that large group of people to lead them all in what? A positive direction. So you're looking for someone with a good character, you're looking for someone that could bring people together, you're probably going to be looking for someone that's pretty damn competent as well, and someone that could like achieve like the highest level of eudaimonia for the group of people that they're leading. I'm sure there's other attributes that we could assign to leadership here, but there's going to be a general sense.
Bro, pull out eudaimonia. Look,
Wait, Nick,
this is where you're wrong.
Nick, let's do you need to respond, or let's do a 1 minute closing statement here?
Can I just respond and then we can do...
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So just to respond to that, I mean, and this is kind of the whole essence of the debate.
Didn't
is you
cut me off last time? Funny. Go ahead.
You fundamentally misunderstand human nature, and you know nothing about leadership. You say it's about bringing everyone together to move in a positive direction. It's like, this is the problem with Gen Z. It's like this kind of kindergartner. Hang on, can I finish, please? I didn't interrupt all that nonsense. It's just sort of like, hey, everybody, let's all hold hands and let's just create, like everyone's being nice to each other. The world is a mess, okay? The world is a knife fight. On the global scale, when you're talking about leaders and armies, it's a knife fight for existence. When you're talking about companies, it's a knife fight for existence. We're talking about anything. Human competition, it's practically homicidal between people, and anyone that's serious about anything will tell you that. Anyone that's obsessed, anyone that's ambitious, anyone who is ruling, who is actually the leaders in society, who earn their role there, they'll tell you the same thing. It's cutthroat. And yeah, like there are some abilities, like you said, like, yeah, you need to inspire people, things like that. But more than that, you need a willingness to do what it takes. You need an ambition. You need to take risks. You need to be willing to make decisions and stand by them. These are all qualities that purely because of gender and hormones, because of their biological role, women don't have those things. Because women have to have a baby grow inside of them for 9 months and then hear it scream and cry and take care of it and feed them from their breast and have like basically a dependent. They're just not made for that kind of competition. They have a completely care-based ethics. They're totally dependent. Men who are individuals, risk takers, aggressive, men who can exist independently of women when it's really not so the other way around. They alone have the ability to do what it takes to lead. And that's why, even with all the DEI in the world, you're still going to have men running everything. The private sector, the public sector, the military, because men are the ones that can lead. And thus, they do. It's only through ideologically motivated policies from human resources departments that you get women doing fucking anything other than like creating schedules and being nurses and being fucking teachers and stuff like that. That's just reality. Everyone knows it. And you could give me 100 studies. That's human nature.
Dean, respond, and then we'll go to closing statements.
Yeah, it's funny how you're saying that you can't get women to do anything. If a woman didn't do something, you want to be sitting here having this debate with me right now. But I would just wanted to respond to that. You're saying men are so much better at leading than women, and I hate women because I haven't touched one since conception. Sorry, that's not what you said. You actually said, because they're not aggressive.
I touch them. I just don't. I don't have sex with them. They're not my wife.
I don't know about that. Anyways, so
you're a rapist.
I'm not gonna call
Orange
you
man
a rapist
bad
without evidence.
Orange and glad.
So anyway,
ahead,
no, you're good, man. What I was gonna ask, well, if like ambition, risk taking, and aggressiveness is what makes you a good leader, Hitler was an incredibly ambitious, aggressive risk taker. Given your qualifications, would you thereby say that Hitler is a good leader?
It's indisputable he is. Indisputably. You could even say he's evil. He made Germany great again. Even if you believe he's evil.
Who would you rather have run our country right now? Your wife or Hitler?
Hitler! Of course. Of course. I don't have a wife, but if I did, she would not be fit to run the country. I could tell you that much. She can run the kitchen. She can't run the lawnmower. I'll put it that way. And I think anyone would. One's in the chat if you'd rather Hitler over your wife. Two's if you prefer your wife. We'll let the fucking numbers do the talking over here. I don't think I'm alone in that.
Okay, let's do a 1 minute closing. Let's do 1 minute Nick and then 1 minute Dean. Nick, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so my closing statement is that, look, it's human nature. I am not an empiricist. I don't think we need to consult the studies. I think we know our nature. I think God created a man and a woman. We're created with two different reproductive faculties. We're created with, as a result, different anatomies, different natures, different dispositions. We're made with complementarity. Men and women are not only made differently, they're made to complement each other, which doesn't mean that they're necessarily opposites, but it does mean that there's like reciprocal differences. As a result of these essential immutable differences, we should treat men and women differently, and we do. That's why we have things like chivalry. That's why men don't hit women. That's why men and women don't compete in the same sports. And, a lot of people understand that, but then they don't understand why we would say we don't want a woman president, or why we wouldn't want to send women into combat, or why we think that men aren't badass bikers and whatever in the same way that men are. But it all proceeds from the same essential complementary natures that the two sexes were given by God. To pretend otherwise is to ignore our eyes and our experience and what we know about ourselves and the people in our lives.
Dean, 1 minute.
Yeah, first of all, you said that's why men don't hit women. Men do hit women. It sucks. Second of all, let's talk about why men are not better at leading than women. Every single point that Nick Fuentes has been reduced to him telling us all that Hitler is a better candidate for America's president today compared to Kamala Harris or his very own wife. I don't give a shit about the 12 or 13-year-old little boys spamming 1 in Aiden's chat. Anyone with half of a fucking brain cell can tell that this logic is not immutable, and it leads you to being a fucking incel RNC droid repeating the same alternative media talking points that you got from Andrew fucking Tate. Okay, right? The facts of the matter are, this guy said men are better at leading than women because they're physically stronger. Physical strength is not indicative of being better at leading. Go talk to the biggest guy in your gym and see who would be better at leading. This guy also brought up levels of emotion. Men are more emotional than women. We all know this. That's why they commit vast majority of violent crimes. That's why they commit vast majority of suicides. That's why they abuse hard drugs more. Right?
It's about time, Dean.
TV, kidnapping, etc. more. Another point that he brought up was intelligence. Women have a higher IQ on average. Let's face the facts, folks. There's no evidence to believe that men are better at leading than women, and I suggest you treat the women in your life damn well and don't tell them to stay in the kitchen or you're not gonna get a wife.
That's time, Dean.
28-year-old Nick Fuentes over here hasn't been able to get a girlfriend since he was born. That's why, folks. That's why you're an incel. But we're gonna go ahead and move on now.
Oh, guys, I mean, you love to see it. Nick Fuentes just wiped at the floor with Dean Withers. Once again, Nick Fuentes absolutely exposing the weakness and fragility of this liberal worldview. They're all just beta males. These people don't debate, they melt down nonstop. They run, they censor, they cry victim because they can't handle a reality where traditional values and hard truth shatter their modern narrative. But guys, if you're tired of being lied to by the mainstream and you want more unfiltered truth, we're dropping tons of Nick Fuentes clips on this channel. I mean, unfortunately, Nick Fuentes isn't on YouTube. I'm going to make it my goal to drop 4 or 5 Nick clips per day. So guys, if you want to see more of this debate, they debate various subjects. There's about 6 subjects they talk about: immigration, Donald Trump, a bunch of other stuff. So if you guys want to see more, let me know in the comments. All right, guys, make sure you like, subscribe, and if you want to support my show, make sure you become a member. And also check out Nick on Rumble. He's live on weekdays. All right, you guys take care and God bless.
This message is brought to you by Apple Card. Get 3% daily cash back when you buy an iPhone with your Apple Card at Apple. Subject to credit approval. Apple Card issued by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Terms and more at applecard.com.
Can we get every answer right to this impossible quiz?
Welcome to Good Mythical More. We're going to be doing what is called an ABC or an A to Z, A through Z quiz, where we're going to answer 26 consecutive questions.
That's the same number
of the letters in the alphabet. The first one we'll answer, the answer will begin with A, and then the second one with B, and all the way to Z.
First one to answer correct gets the point.
And here's the thing. I think if between the two of us, we get it right and we do, that's the impossible thing. It's like,
Somebody gets it right. Eventually.
If we both together, we're answering individually, but if we get all of them right together, then we have succeeded.
We'll take the credit as a unit, as a duo.
Okay, great. First question. What was the 16th president's given name?
Abraham Lincoln.
No.
There you go.
Oh. Was it that easy? Yeah. We called it an impossible quiz in the first.
Well, I
said
said some are really easy and some are hard, and that one was really easy. But
It's an
what were you
impossible
gonna
quiz.
say?
Well, Lincoln said it. You didn't think it was right. I was right.
I was like, it has to be.
Lincoln's the 16th president.
I was like, it has to be harder than that. It's an impossible quiz.
Oh no, it's impossible to get all of them right.
Okay.
Okay. B. Crash, the protagonist of a beloved series of
Bandicoot.
PlayStation. Wow.
Now, is that
What
an
was the
animal?
rest of my question?
Crash, a popular mascot from a Sega game's last name is?
Is this
No.
animal?
Yeah.
Is this animal?
PlayStation game.
Yeah, is it a real
What kind
animal?
of marsupial?
A bandicoot is a real animal?
Yeah. In video, in Sega world.
What are you laughing at, David? I'm asking a honest question here.
I don't think it's real, but I don't know. I don't.
How
think
did you know so
Is that
quickly?
is that why you're laughing?
Oh,
Because
he was a
it's an
Sega guy.
honest question and it shouldn't be. Well, what if a bandicoot is a real animal?
It is. It is a real animal.
Well, then I don't understand the laughter.
Because it's a funny animal.
He also-
I didn't know it was real.
He also cut me off coming into the parking lot today.
Let's talk about that.
David, you cut me off coming in the parking lot, didn't you?
I didn't mean to cut you. You stopped. You gave me away. I had the right of way.
Wait, what,
technically.
yeah, what was the right of way? What was the situation? Paint it for me. Oh,
Link, do you want to?
David, go for it.
Okay, Link was turning left.